if you are really in tune with that car and really get the car set up, you can have some great, you know, sort of great downforce, and the body generates a lot of natural downforce from it. I've driven it a few times. The only thing that I found difficult to work with was the brakes, because it didn't brake, at least in my head, like a front-engine car. It felt a lot more like a Porsche. You could brake so late, and I find myself anchoring on the brakes and realizing that I've pulled up about 30 yards, you know, too short for the corner, and then having to sort of rework it again. But it's definitely an interesting car. It's definitely one that I'm interested to see what it can do, you know, in the evolution, when the, you know, the balance of performance changes, and just as more people get more attuned to it. I thought that a lot of people might have flocked to it. A couple of teams have, but a lot of people sort of sticking with the known, tried and tested of what they are already with as the Williams Esports team for the 55. Look at the power of the Mercedes. The Ferrari, don't they, you know, they have no slipstream, no real comeback to that big V8 power.
Yeah, the Merc was always really, really fast in a straight line when it first came into the GT3 racing scene, and like you say, that big V8 just always seems to have that little bit more top end than a number of the other cars as well. I remember there was a big balance of performance discussion about that Mercedes a long, long time ago, but it certainly is a right old weapon. It's a cannon of an engine up front as well, but it's always been a good all-rounder. You know, it's got a bit of everything about it. Being front-engined, it can be a little bit imbalanced sometimes, like you were explaining before, when you're going downhill especially, Ryan. But I don't know how to best explain the Merc, but it just seems like a car sometimes that is like a slot car or a Scalextric. Obviously other slot car brands are available, but everyone knows the brand Scalextric, so that's what I'm going to stick with. It just looks like a slot car a lot of the time. It's like it's on rails at certain circuits, and then you'll see it go to other tracks. I mean, if you watch it at places like Imola, where there's big curbs, sometimes it looks like the car absorbs the curbs really well, but then other times it rattles off them and bounces around all over the place. It can be a bit of a hard car to predict.
Oh yeah, this car and Imola is, you know, it is just the combination that exactly that you would want. Just the sausage curbs there do not exist. Even other front-engine cars like the Bentley, you know, which is normally a car that we would also say is quite a good curb muncher, you know, they will be caught by it, but the Mercedes just sails over them. The only thing I would say with the Mercedes, I've driven it a few seasons, it requires a very different driving style. That's the only really way I can describe it. I had a couple of people who drive it more normally, you know, sort of try and teach me how they are fast in it, and I sort of sat there in the car, they ran through it, and I says, right, if you could run that through me one more time, but just a little bit slower and in a way that a stupid person can understand. but the only other problem with this car, you bring it to a big endurance, the fuel burn. I mean, it will burn a fair old amount at you know, at Bathurst, but tracks like Spa, it becomes just horrible to work with. It really then starts to limit your strategies, because you might not necessarily be able to fuel save. You know, you have to kind of just go with the flow of what the Mercedes wants you to do, and the strategy becomes put it on full fuel and be fast.
Yeah, that's it. And again, it comes down to certain circuits with certain cars. You know, sometimes it just doesn't quite work like that. And we've got a little bit of conflict going on here. The lead car in the silver category, which is the 110 McLaren, being driven right now by Louis Roters. The McLaren 720S GT3, gorgeous looking machine. The AJA sim racing team powered by Gardi. I like a split livery as well, you know. I really like a split livery. I painted enough of them over certain sims and for a lot of friends of mine, but I like the sort of military green on that car. It looks really, really good. I've just seen your message in the Discord, actually, Ryan, about the Mercedes potentially having damage. I think it looks like it's got a little bit of a scuff on it, but I think it's all right. I think it's just maybe something a little bit cosmetic, because as we often have in this sim especially, over a long distance race, you know, you'll see the cars start to get mucky, you'll see them get scrapes and dents off curbs and so on. They really look like they've been through a long event like this, and that's one of the things that I love about endurance racing. You know, you see Le Mans winning LMP cars whenever they go to certain events after they've won that race, essentially. They never clean them, and that's the best thing about it. I love it when a race car looks used and battered and all mucky. It's great.
Oh yeah, I was looking at the gap between the bonnet and the the front bumper, but I'm actually thinking it might be part of the livery that's just tricking me, making it look like it was a little bit open. You know, normally if you have front damage in ACC, you start to see the bonnet flap, and the reason I said that is because they were right on the back of the 149, but they've dropped back, you know, now 5.4 seconds, and they dive back into the pits. Does the Unicorns of Love Racing team. So the 110 now will have that 7th position.
Just having a quick check of the timing just to see what their lap was like actually last time round. Actually, no. Obviously, now it's just registered the one that they went into the pits with. So
yeah,
we'll have to try and check back on that at some point. But yeah, it's interesting indeed. I don't imagine that would be. Oh no, it was the full stint length actually. Was the full stint length. They did 31 laps on that stint. I just thought they'd come in a lap earlier for some reason, but obviously they've completed that one lap before. Well, one lap before they actually crossed the line, essentially. If that makes sense. I'm contradicting myself here. Here's the race leading car anyway. Gianfranco Giglioli in the Automobili Lamborghini Esports machine. Wonderful blue gradient on this car, and a wonderful team of drivers behind the wheel that are certainly flying this afternoon around Mount Panorama. 2 BMWs joining them on the podium spots at the moment. Gregor Schill and Isaac Price driving those 2 cars, but this Lamborghini seems very, very solid so far, doesn't it, Ryan? Doesn't look that easily touchable, so to speak.
Yeah, well, throughout the whole race, no one's really had to mention, you know, any sort of huge dramas or scuffles or even really battles with the 63. So they've kind of been on their own, and sometimes that's the best way to be in a race. Is if you're not mentioned, it doesn't mean that you're getting into, you know, anything sort of overly exciting or race ruining. They've just been out the front, showing the pace. It's when you're watching some of these, you know, professional sim racing teams, a lot of them that are, you know, sponsored by the real life counterparts, for example, and you're looking at the pace and you think, yeah, I did a 202 once when I took all the fuel out of the car and made it freezing cold. You know, these lot are running around with a full fuel car in conditions, you know, with some heat, and there's still the race pace is a 202, and you sort of sit there and look and think, how is it physically possible? And for this 63, they've just been on the charge since the green flag dropped, basically. Still hold the fastest lap of the race. It does not surprise me, 273 laps in.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And like I say, with me putting some more time into this sim at long last in the last couple of weeks, it does make me realise how, you know, I think I'm a big hot shot, and then I look at the times on the board and it's like, oh, I'll give up. Here's the number 4 machine, the Mercedes-AMG Esports Team HRT car of Leon Otoki. Car number 4 currently inside the top 10. A little bit of unlapping, I think, going on there in the background, or at least one of the Hondas putting a lap on somebody in one of the BMWs. But again, just climbing back up the hill so quickly. A little bit of a shimmy there on the way through by Leon. Car seemingly wanting to just drag the front end around to the right-hand side of the circuit. You can get that quite a lot in these sorts of cars. His last lap time was a 2:03.4. Car behind, which is David Tonitza, was a 2:02.5. So there's 9/10 of a second difference in those previous laps. But Otoki was actually another 8/10 slower than the car in front as well. So at the moment, that Mercedes not going as quickly as its competition around it. And surely you've got to be thinking, how long will it be till that Ferrari gets close behind them? Because the gap last time round, if I try and have a look at least, was about 9 seconds. And when we first started talking about it, it was about 13, wasn't it?
I think it was around about, yeah, it's now 10 point, just over 10 seconds as he crossed timing beam. It could have been as well what we when we cut to the you know, the chase for the number 4. You don't know what they might have been having to do for traffic. Some drivers, obviously, if you get stuck behind a back market car over the mountain, there's nothing you can really do, and that can easily cost you that 9/10. We'll see what the lap time might be for the number 4 for the Mercedes AMG Esports team, for the HRT Red as well, another livery that I quite enjoy. It is another 2:03.052. So yeah, I would say that the 51 Davitonidze, they are reeling them in slowly. Whether it's going to be fast enough to get them by the end of this stint, I don't know. The gap's now 9.6. But yeah, it is coming down ever so slowly. Just in the background there, we just about caught them, is the 51 all the way, just going through turn 1.
And the 110 McLaren has just been in the pits as well and just come back out, actually. They just dropped a couple of places on the timing tower on the left-hand side there, but Osterman now back out on circuit. But yeah, the Ferrari starting to show up in the background of shot right now, and will be on the back of the Mercedes in the not too distant future if the lap times continue to stay as they are. Still, we have a wonderful race going on here at Bathurst. We hope you're all enjoying yourselves as well, watching along from home. Everybody in the chat having a fantastic time. We appreciate all of you being here so far, and of course everybody that is working on this behind the scenes. Teams and drivers working so hard, and this is one of those circuits where you just never have any mental break from anything, really. Maybe the Conrod straight, but even then you've got to hype yourself up for the chase, and you might have cars around you that are trying to slipstream from you, or you might be trying to use slipstream from them. It's not a circuit that lets you rest at all, and stints here, I mean, they're just so tough. And look how close Leon Atuki got to that barrier there out of Forest Elbow. It's such an important part of the circuit, and these guys run millimetres away from that wall. It's just incredible precision.
I mean, obviously, every team that sort of comes to Bathurst, if you want to run those kind of times, you have to you know, open out the corner as much as possible. The Forest Elbow is such a critical corner every single time you come up to it because of the run all the way down the Conrod. If you have the back straight, if you have just that little bit of a wobble, little bit of a mistake, you can just watch your delta creep away and away and away, and that is, you just do nothing about it really as it just gets away from you. But yeah, it's incredible to see, really. I'm really glad that you know, I could come and commentate on this. 2 hours 30 left to go, and nothing really as well. Obviously, at the minute, I think we're still only on the top 5 cars are on the lead lap. But I'm kind of interested to see what's going to happen towards the end of the race. You never know what strategies are going on, and you mentioned how sometimes you have a bit of a break down the straights. Well, I know as a driver sometimes, you know, you're setting tyre pressures, you're talking to your team manager, sometimes you're having to strategize all these things down the straight. So a driver's job is never done as much as you know, you might think it. You kind of always have to be on your A game. And then this section, we kind of had a thing with a couple of teams that I ran with where after turn 2 you had a radio silence, so we did not talk to the driver at all. They were, you know, complete, whatever conversation you were having, it was ended, or we'd you know, we'd mute the driver so they didn't hear our radio chatter, and then as they come back out onto the straight, we would unmute them, continue talking. Yeah,
it's not a bad shout, to be fair. It's certainly something to commit to over the course of the race. I mean, I did the Bathurst 12 hours on iRacing a few years ago, and let me tell you, if you think it's difficult in ACC, it's even more difficult in iRacing, obviously known as ice racing, because there is no grip anywhere whatsoever. And we had a very similar scenario where it would be, right, I'm into the cutting now, shut up. And then that would be it. And then you get down the straight and it'd be party mode again, and everyone would be kicking off and chatting away, go through the chase, probably mess it up, and then, yeah, radio silence once again. We look now at the number 10 Bentley being driven right now by Jakob Charcot. This is the Triton racing machine, beautiful teal colour. Looks like one of the PMA motorsport cars, which compete in many touring car championships all over Europe. They go with a sort of teal and black livery on their cars. And he's got one of the Audis right in front of him, and then one of the McLarens. I believe that's that's not the Veloce car, is it? In front of them, it's got the yellow highlight. No, it is the Veloce car with the yellow highlights. Actually, it's just ahead. They're all bobbing their way round. Oh, apparently it's not the Veloce car. I'm mistaken. I apologise. I thought it was. I thought the Veloce car was all white, but clearly I'm wrong. I need to learn my liveries again. But let's have a look at how they all behave themselves down the hill, because this is actually great to see. When you get a bunch of cars like this together, Ryan, you do actually get a little bit of visual body language from each car, how they're all behaving in different ways. And again, look at them scraping along. It's like something from Tony Hawk's Underground 2 along that wall. It's fantastic. And there you go. The producer has just let me know it's the Prime E racing car. Thank you very much, Mike. But it looked similar to the Veloce one with the logo on the side earlier. I'm going to keep defending myself on that, even though I don't need to. The Audi climbs around all over the back of them, down the inside of the chase. Lovely. That looked a little bit late, and maybe a bit too late, Ryan. Straight on he goes.
Well, that's what I mentioned about 15-20 minutes ago about the slipstreaming, when and the Audi can be, you know, once again another car that can really pick up its heels once you've got some slipstream, and that can very much happen. You hit the brakes, so you know that we're not going to go as what's going to happen for the 110. Touch the wall slightly, they're now under attack from the Chill Blast Williams Esports Bentley, trying to get around them, and it looked like that car as well. They had a little bit of a scrape on the left side, easy to see with the sort of the matte green camo paint job that they've got there. But for the 110, trying to recover their thing, I think they were at one point leading silver, I believe, before they just came into the pits, so they'll not really want to lose much time on this stint.
No, definitely. And you know, it's easy to try and push a little bit too hard over the course of an entire stint, and like you were saying before about losing just 0.3 of a second a lap, when you see how much that equates to over an entire stint, it suddenly hits home how serious that can be. You know, I could happily get in the car and teammates would tell me, oh, we're about a second slower than the car that's chasing us per lap, you know, and I'll think, you know, in the long run that's not too bad, but depending on the gap, and obviously depending on how quick the car is behind you, how consistent they are, well, that can equate to a humongous amount, and the guys really have to think about that. There's a lot of dust being kicked up there through the chase on the right hand side of our shot. One of the Ferraris has just dived into the pits, but there was a lot of dust being kicked up there. I think somebody may have had a little bit of an off as we cut back to the second place machine, which is Isaac Price in the BMW G2 Esports machine. Another wonderful looking car, very fancy livery on this machine. And you mentioned it earlier, Ryan, about these liveries looking really good on these cars, but it's the fact that on some of these cars we see what we, or at least I, call a realistic livery sometimes, where that is a very fancy wrap on that car. You probably wouldn't see one looking like that all of the time in the real world because of how much of a pain in the backside it would be to do again if you dinged it. But I like to see these sort of more out there liveries, as well as a mix of what I'd call realistic ones as well. What's your sort of stance on that?
Yeah, I'm still pretty much, follow you. I do like, and I'm just looking in the background as well. We see, I believe that's the Mobileye, the blue BMW, a bit more of a realistic livery. But then G2 have always had, some really out there liveries, as you see Isaac Price. You have to really fight the car. You want the nose to tuck in, for that lap time. But we were informed as well, they've been catching a number of tenths as well over the course of this. Over the course of this stint, so it might not all be over. They've got a fair decent gap, I believe. I think there's 63 have they come down pit lane.
Let's have a look at what the lap time is like, though, because he's being held up right now by the Bentley. And we'll have to check how much time he's going to lose on this. The last lap that he did was a 2:03.1. 63 has been through the pits, so obviously we just wait to see now how long it's going to be till they come in, because this is their, well, they've done 30 laps on this stint. Race leader did 31 laps on theirs, so I imagine Isaac is actually going to come in this time round. He's got the Bentley very much filling his windscreen right now. It's like a housing estate on wheels, as I always say. David Tanitsa into the pits after that car has broken into the top 10. We just need to wait to see how the pit stops synchronise with them as well. Isaac now just guiding the BMW around, hugs the left-hand side, and yeah, indeed, does come in. So it seems like 31 laps is just about the limit here, to be fair, Ryan. And at this point, it becomes a 12-hour sprint race because of the reliability. Obviously, no engine failures or anything simulated here. The cars can just be absolutely ragged to death for 31 laps time and time again. There's not really any point short stinting unless it's into the last stint or so, maybe, just to try and get an undercut.
Yeah, you can have engine damage though, and Bathurst is probably one of the worst tracks for it, because ACC does kind of replicate that, but mainly if you downshift too viciously. But what can happen, we find, is the worst place for it when you're going down the hill, the corner just before Forest Elbow. Well, obviously it's quite an odd camber, and there's a lot of suspension unloading there. the weight transfer, you're going downhill, you're braking, might necessarily completely lose weight over the rear wheels. And what can happen, even though these cars do have downshift protection, so you can't go from 6th to 1st, for example, if you're unloaded, if the tyres are completely unloaded, you can downshift, they'll grip back up and you will over rev the engine. And I know this because I've done this myself before in a couple of the turbo cars are really common for it. Aston Martin and the Bentley, you can easily do that. So you've got to keep your eyes on the prize, as it was. But for a lot of the pro teams, they've practiced so many laps around here that it's now just not a thing that they end up doing. As the 14 looks at the inside of the race, anywhere Ferrari, there's another livery as well that's very sort of eye-catching. At least you can tell where they are with the luminous green accents. But yeah, for the Mercedes AMG Esports team, Unicorns of Love, they're got back on out of the pits, back on the charge. And this car, another car like the 51, where the 51 dropped all the way outside of, I believe the producer said it was the top 31. Then they've sort of driven all the way back up. This car obviously had that incident earlier, and they've got very much back on the charge into the top 10, probably a little bit higher when the pit stops start to shake themselves out.
Yeah, it's again, it's all about circumstances. You could be on an absolute monster of a stint and then get held up with a big bunch of traffic as it progresses. It can be a big unknown in these races because you never quite understand how everybody's going to be spread out, who's going to be where, who's going to have incidents, and what might slow you down. But still, at the front of the field, Isaac Price in the BMW has been in, so that car now in 3rd position, and the 63 Lamborghini retains its race lead after yet another stop. And the gap last time round was quite substantial, if I remember rightly, but they were starting to catch back up. So again, and more elements of this race to keep our eyes on. I'm trying to remember so many different elements at once here, Ryan, but this is the wonderful challenge of events like this as commentators, isn't it? Is that we have all of these wonderful notes and all of the information thrown at us from these guys, and Michael Hamlet again has been an absolute star behind the scenes, continuously giving average lap times and stint times, pit stops and so on. But again, it's just bewildering the amount of info you do get in these races, and it just makes it all the more entertaining because there's always something to talk about, I guess.
Yeah, well, that gap that you mentioned from the 63 and the 1, at one point it was as high as 24 seconds that we, that I last glanced at it. The last time they crossed the timing beam was 18, and then the next time was a 17.9. It's gone back up to that 18 seconds, perhaps a little bit of traffic. But it does mean, though, coming towards the end of the race, the number 1 might be picking up the pace. They might have actually decided, that now they're just pushing that couple of tenths faster. And over that entire stint, get a little bit lucky with the traffic, get a bit lucky with the stint, and if the car sort of hooks up, there's as well so many things that you never really see as a driver, or you never see as an outsider. You only feel it as the driver. Is heating the tires up in this game is so critical. You can have graining. You can have graining late on in the stint that kind of goes away if it's only light, and your pace will come back. Just sometimes the car doesn't want to really cooperate with you. I've had that before where you just think, "Wow, where has all my pace gone?" But then the next the next stint you do will be perfect. But yeah, perhaps towards the end of the race, you got 2 minutes and 18 left on the clock. I'd never say never if I was the number 1.
Well, yeah, I mean, you never know how, touching wood when I say this, because I wouldn't wish it on any of the teams or any of the drivers, but you never know how far an incident is away from happening. They can happen very, very quickly, especially around here. We saw it for this number 14 Mercedes earlier. It's just one little push too much over the top of the mountain to kick the back end of the car out, overcorrect it, rather than just save it like normal, just to overcorrect it that little bit, and you can throw it clean into the barrier, and your race can not be over as such, but I mean, at this sort of stage, when we get this further through, or sorry, this far through with only a couple of hours left to go, it can be over essentially, can't it? Because there's no time to come back from it.
Yeah, when the gaps start opening out, it's as much as you never want an issue in any sort of race, you always kind of want the issue to happen more towards the start of the race, because the pack is actually still all bunched up. They're being held up by one another. you know, right at the end of the race, everyone's kind of spread out. You go into pits for maybe that, you know, 15, 20, 45, however much damage you've done to the car. You come out and you just end up in kind of no man's land where you're still lapping. The race is still on because you're still having that delta battle. Okay, you're not, you know, nose to bumper to someone on track, but you are still racing them on the track in the pit stops. But yeah, it just makes it turns the race around and makes it into a different kind of race. So it's, you always, at least what we always used to say, it's never over until it's over, but it's just we've just gone to plan B now.
Yeah, that's it. You have to always have a plan B in these events, and we mentioned before that you can't plan for every eventuality, but you can at least try to, and a number of these teams will have done just that. We look now at Tinko van der Velde, the Williams Esports Chill Blast 1000 Bentley, the big old beefy Bentley. Fantastic car, and again, a real testament to the balance of performance in GT3 racing, that a car the size of a postcode can actually be as quick as a lot of the other cars around it. It's side by side here. That's Kirill Sadarov for the Simware Pro by VDES car, trying it on with the Aston Martin right now. Macaulay at the wheel of that machine, very, very close together, almost entering the pits is the Bentley as he comes in. Oh, he makes contact into the final corner. The Aston goes one way, then the other. Oh, it was a little bit scrappy by both of them, to be honest. Kirill was not giving it up at all, was he? He was really holding to that left-hand side, making sure that he got the nose down the inside. But you could argue there that Joe Macaulay, well, it's FFS racing, and FFS is going to be definitely what he's saying right now. But you could argue that he came over and kept that gap really, really well, smaller than a Bentley, so at least less than a kilometre wide. But I'd say that's a bit of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other there, Ryan. You know, I think Kirill should have maybe backed out from going for a gap that wasn't quite there, but once Joe saw that he was alongside, he didn't give him any extra room, did he, to make the move?
Yeah, and once again, that'll be a good moment for the stewards to have a look through. I'm sure that's why I would be terrible as a steward, but you could see, you know, that the FFS racing team, they came out of the corner, they knew that the Bentley was right behind them, went defensive. Bentley looked like they almost, like you said, went into the pit lane. Was there a car width there? Wasn't there a car width there? At the end of the day, the 23s ended up backwards for it, and I'm sure we'll have the you know, the report for that in a little bit. We'll have to keep his eyes for it. But Joe Macaulay gets the car spun back round and back on. I don't think they made it to the wall though, so it'd be just minimal damage, if anything, just a spin out, maybe a tiny bit of flat spotted tyres if he stood on the brakes, and a lot of time loss.
Yeah, that's it, and he did do a good job to make sure it didn't go in the wall, because as soon as he knew there was an issue, and as soon as he knew that the car was going around, well, that was it. He just stamped on the brakes, made sure that the barrier was the last place it was going, and unfortunately there is a bit of a look into that, at least, needed by the stewards, I think it's safe to say. But they are doing a mega job as ever. There's a lot of them that always do a lot of hard work behind the scenes on these events, and you know, they make sure that all of the incidents and every little moment out on track is looked at as much as it would be in a real world race. You know, the team of drivers that we have here, and the ability to go through multiple camera angles as well. You know, there's people that have driven in the sim. The stewards have the chance to drive in the sim, which is what makes it so great and relative to what they can do. You know what I mean? You know, they could just jump in and get in the car themselves, so they know how it feels, how it behaves, rather than in the real world. You know, if someone's a steward on a GT3 race and they've never driven a GT3 car before, there's not that sort of understanding, if you know what I mean, between the two.
Yeah, well, I think Jesse mentioned this a while ago when they were going on about you know, the stewarding, the fact that you have to have that human decision because, you know, ultimately it is all situational of what you know, what some reports come down to, and there are some accidents where, from an outside perspective, it may look like, you know, that was, you know, a blatant takeout, or it was not on, or why did that, you know, why did they do this? But when you actually know that, for example, you know, you take a McLaren and touch a curb and you become a passenger, maybe that's why that car speared off. You know, you have a car like a Porsche, and they were completely aero washed and spun off, causing a collision. Maybe that's why, because they were so close. It just adds that little bit more information for all the stewards, and the more information you can grab as a steward, the better the end result is when you compare it to the rule books and just everything that all the stewards, producers, and everyone has on hand.
Yeah, definitely. The more info they can get, the better. Like you say, it's all about just having that knowledge, and knowledge is power, as people say. But the race goes on. The incident will be looked at, and we have all confidence that the right decision will be made on that one. Tinko van der Velde here on our screens in the Bentley, roaring its way through McPhillamy Park, right behind the number 67 Ferrari, just in front of him, with Fabian Piffet at the wheel. That is the Race Anywhere SimSports Silver Ferrari that they are chasing, and that of course is the silver category car. So not necessarily fighting for the same class here, but at the end of the day, it's overall position. Neither of them are going to want to lose any time, so they may scrap for this place given the chance. Tinko now just making his way back down the Conrod Straight once more before lining himself up to see maybe if he can just at least gain a little bit of time into the chase, because the Ferrari does have another car just in front of it. I think that's the 110 McLaren, is it not, of Osterman. It's just there in front of them, trying also to stay on the pace of the cars ahead. The number 14 Mercedes is now inside the top 10, just ahead of them, but obviously I think there's a few pit stops still to phase out, actually, isn't there, to get that car. That car was surely 1 or 2 more places ahead of that earlier.
Yeah, I believe so. And the other thing as well for the Bentley driver, it's hard to sort of keep up with a Ferrari, especially if they've got the slipstream, because that car is no slouch in a straight line once it's actually got going. The Bentley here, having this view that we're watching on board, is kind of a little bit more home for me. The Bentley is what I drive all the time, and also you'll notice where the camera is. It's because it's a right-hand drive. It's the only right-hand drive GT3 car on the whole field, which is interesting to see. You can tell if a driver isn't in tune with the Bentley, especially around Bathurst, because you'll see them tapping walls, because it's the opposite side of every other car. But the Ferraris, they'll touch into the 280 kilometers an hour, I believe, and the Bentley, if you are slipstreaming someone and if you have a low drag setup, as in you've taken the angle of the wing all the way down, you will almost hit the rev limiter. In fact, sometimes we did an experiment. We took all the wing off a Bentley and had a slipstream run all the way down Conrod, and we hit the rev limiter. I think it was 277 kilometers an hour. That is all the Bentley's got to give, and once you've reached that, obviously the car in front of you, they're still accelerating. Yeah,
that's it's quite amazing that you could still hit the limiter like that in a Bentley, to be honest with you. But that's the thing, it's one of those cars. It's got a beefy V8 up front, it's got a lot of torque, a lot of power, and obviously the balance of performance makes sure it's not got too much of said power. But I mean, you say it's more like home, it's probably home to about 30 other people as well, to be fair, because that's how many you could fit in the Bentley, and the jokes will never stop ending about, well, they will never end about the size of this car. But it's sort of got a cute face to it, it's not got the most menacing of looks about the front end of it. When you compare it to the Ferrari and the McLaren that it's chasing, they're both very angry looking race cars, very menacing machines, but the Bentley's almost got this sort of, I don't know, this false sense of security, luring, calm face about the front end of it. I think
it's a little bit more scary in the dark with the endurance lights when one comes roaring up behind you and you realise, as he says, how big they are. But it's a really interesting car, and ProDrive did quite a number on that Bentley. It's one of the lighter GT3 cars, and I am not actually making that up. As much as people look at it and laugh, if you look at the stats from when that car used to run, sad they don't run anymore, but from when they used to run, yeah, they were one of the lighter cars. They've got a fairly good weight distribution. If you ever see that car in real life, if you do get to have the chance, with the bonnet popped, you have to get the binoculars out to see where the engine is. It's so low down, it's so far back, it's well past the front axle. And technically, you could call it a front mid car because of that. And the gearbox is a transaxle way at the back of the car for, it's got really good weight distribution. So it must have been quite a project really for ProDrive. Bentley came to them with a big luxury, huge GT cruiser of a car and said, we want to make a GT3 car out of this, but it's got to be good. And we want to win some races, please. Oh, it's also got to be really good on endurance and fuel. Can you do that for us? I mean, what ProDrive turned out, you know, it was a good car when it was running along, and I used to wave the Bentley flag all the time. I was just sad to see it Kyle Army. It did pull off for them, but will it pull off for the number 5 Tinko van der Velde? They looked down the inside of the race anyway car, but you see what I mean? Look, they pulled out. Yeah. The Bentley just ran out of puff. It's
such a shame to see, but like you say, it is technically mid-engine because of how far back the engine is. It's an incredible feat of engineering. And you know, even the first version, I'm going to say this out loud, I can't believe this, I think the first one looked better than the second one. However, I do love the rear wing on this second car. It's a mad shape. It's a huge rear wing. And let's not forget, they take 1.5 tons out of the road car in terms of the weight difference to make this. And GT3 cars aren't even 1.5 tons in themselves. So that just shows you how heavy the road cars are. And I actually I can see from my window the Bentley factory. I used to say it was a stone's throw, but then people start getting particular, saying, flipping heck, Chaz, you could throw a stone really far. But I can see the Bentley factory roof from my window, and I see all of the, like, whenever a car comes out and has a bit of a shakedown, they rag it up and down the country lanes. I mean, they drive it really respectfully and slowly up and down the country lanes around Cheshire. And you see them with the delivery plates and all that on, and it's still with the plastic covers on and everything. It's great to see, I must admit. And yeah, again, they make wonderful cars, but I still think that ProDrive, like you say, did an absolute number. In your words as well, Ryan, they did a number on that GT3, and it's a beast. Oh, sorry, I think there was a bit of maybe a bit of shenanigans going on there between the Honda and the Porsche. It looked like the Rocket SimSport NSX was down the inside of the Porsche for a sec there, and then all of a sudden when the camera changed and we got to the exit of Quarry, the Porsche was very slow on the exit, the Honda was very slow on the sort of inside of the corner, and there was a lot of light flashing going on. I think there might have been a bit of a disagreement there, mate.
Yeah, I think there might have been some light touchy between the cars. The Mobileye 127 looked up the outside, thought better of it, just better to, you know, kind of fall back in line and line up your move, especially if you're you know, right behind a Porsche, because now the Porsche's speed in the corners is being governed by that Lamborghini in front. Always the best place to try to overtake a Porsche is in the straight line, as sad as it is to say, because in real life, and especially in some other series, the Porsche can have some great speed, but a lot of the times in ACC it is a little bit lacking to some of the other cars, depending on what setup they've got. They will be saved because they've also got the you know, the toe of the Lamborghini in front. But look at the BMW now starting to pull. It gets to that moment where you have to decide, are you going to go for it on the inside, on the outside? The 127 decides that, you know what, this time around we're just going to stay single file.
Yeah, you have to just, well, what is it they say, discretion is the better part of valour a lot of the time. I think there's a number of situations throughout this race where you will have that come in. Now, the Porsche itself has a bit of clean air as the Lamborghini hops into the pit lane. So the 977 machine currently being driven by Pignon, as the BMW very much filling his mirrors right now. And you mentioned earlier about the BMW being quite a bulky car and spreading its weight really well. Cars like that really come into their own when it's wet. You know, they have a lot more natural mechanical grip, like you said. You know, each of the four corners really does just stick in the wet because of how well spread out the weight is. You know, it's not it's not heavier in any respects. It's just where the weight lies in the car, as they managed to move over very quickly there for blue flags for the Williams Mercedes. That could come into their favour, actually, because then if the Mercedes opens the door on the Porsche, they'll be right back through.
Well, that's sometimes what you've you know, what you've got to think about, and that might even be that the you know, they had their team radio on saying Williams are coming up fast, just let them by, we'll try to stick with them, and you will pass them when the Porsche has to eventually let them through, because now they're on a charge and it won't be long before that big V8 manages to muscle their way right up to the back of the Porsche. But yeah, in the wet as well, the other thing that the BMW's got going for it, you know, it is the newest car on the grid, probably still has that nice new car smell from BMW, but yeah, because of that, the traction control systems have come a long way. I mean, I don't know if you've in ACC ever gone to the side of the garage that we call the last generation cars. It's where such dinosaurs live as, say, the Jag and the old Bentley and you know, the old Audi. Driving those cars, you in the wet, you realize how far technology has come with all of the systems that these cars, you know, are adorned with, the computers that control these cars now. Because like driving the Jag in the wet, you will feel the definition of "I hate this traction control." It doesn't move. It just doesn't move, and you can turn it all the way down to 1, and it still doesn't move. And the old V12 Aston is another one for it. It has the very distinct cutting sound as the traction control desperately tries to keep all the horses that the V12 has on the road, but they're sort of failing. And that was a car as well. I don't know if you've ever seen that here in real life. The V12 Aston Martin here is scary.
Oh yeah, I love the old V12 Vantage. It's such an insane car. Massive rear wing on it as well, incredibly tall. Used to be a number of them in the British GT Championship, and I absolutely adore it. It was the first car I actually drove on Assetto Corsa Competizione as well. And funnily enough, I followed it up and thought, oh, I'm going to try the wet weather. And I drove the Jag at the Nürburgring in the wet. And guess what I shouted? I hate this traction control. That's funny actually though, because I started doing the career mode in Assetto Corsa Competizione, and one of the first things I drove was the 650S McLaren. In my opinion, the prettiest GT3 car ever made. However, an absolute pig is a real massive understatement of describing how that car is, because it is more than a pig. It's an entire farm of pigs trying to drive that thing. I think one of my favourite Clarkson analogies I've ever heard is it's like trying to win the Grand National on a lion that's made out of jelly and teeth. And that's what it was like trying to drive the McLaren in the wet. It's just unbelievable. But then you jump in the 720S, what a machine. You know, you really do feel the difference. It's incredible how far it has come. And yeah, again, it's mad that most of that comes from the technology of it. You know, the Neanderthal route of just give them more power, give them more downforce, isn't the only thing that has sort of settled that difficulty in the wet, is it? It's actually more down to how the systems can compute. They've got the data now, and the way they can program the cars to behave in the wet is just amazing.
Yeah, well, the first car that I ended up driving was the 2015 GTR, and if anyone finds where the front end of the 2015 GTR is going, can you please mail it to me? Because through the steering wheel, there's nothing. I don't understand where it's gone. But
no, you're right. You're totally right.
It just doesn't. You get to a certain point of steering, and then that's it. No more feel. There's kind of a little bit of feel, no matter what you do with all those casters. You know, no matter what you do with the setup. I went into the, you know, knowing. You know, I've had a bit of a motorsport background, know how to set up a race car. I went, yeah, I'm going to set this up. I'll fix this car. 4 hours later, I was still thinking, why can't I make it feel like I want it to? And put it down to, you know, this is just not working. But then when you actually sit and think back, what was really scary to think, and kind of then you think, oh no, I'm becoming old, is I remember when that car was brand new in GT1. The Sumo power car, and you realize that was 2010, like 2009, 2010. It's now 2015. The car's been made into a GT3 car, and then it was 2018 before it got its sort of update, and then it, you know, it's kind of faded into obscurity now. But apparently, from what I'm being told anyway, there's still a couple of them running around in the Asia region. They're just all hiding, really.
I don't know how you hide a car that big, but the. I remember when I first saw actually the GTR, it was, again, there was a couple of them in the British GT Championship. I think Sir Chris Hoy drove one as well. And the original one with the massive rear wing on it, like we're talking GT3 rear wings, that thing was the daddy of them all. Beautiful twin middle supports on it as well. They weren't evenly spread out like the rest of the cars. What an amazing wing that thing had on it. And of course, yeah, they had the GT Academy car as well, actually, as Mike has very rightly just pointed out to us in the background there.
I know where that car went.
Oh, do you? It was in the barrier.
No, the GT Academy car that had that awesome safety car restart here. That was the 2015. If anyone, you know, runs on Brick Car and you said you commentate on it, that is the Fox Transport car.
Oh, is it that one?
It's that one.
Oh,
it was
right.
The GT Academy car. It then became a private owned motor liveried car that kind of just hung around the BRDC. It was kind of just, you saw it on test days, you saw it occasionally at certain events, not really doing anything, and then it disappeared. Yeah, that's because Richard bought it, and it's now the Fox Transport car. But we traced all the history back when we got that car and drug it to the workshop, and it was only when we looked into it, because it was a weird spec. It was a, you know, we got the car and it said a 2018 model, and we looked under the bonnet and realised the engine was in a different place from the 2018. And yeah, it was when we looked at the chassis number, realised, oh, it's this car. It was such a strange thing to say, but looking back.
Sorry, wasn't it being driven by? Is that the same one that was being driven by Graham Tilley and Wiltra Goethe in GT Cup? Or am I? Yeah, it was. Yeah, Mike's just confirmed it. Yeah, and I saw them at Brands Hatch in that thing, and it is, well, it's not GT3 power levels anymore, because obviously in that championship it was sort of semi-unlimited in the GTO class of the GT Cup. Last time I heard about it, it was over 700, but I'm not quite sure how far north of 700 it was. But,
it had a lot of horses, because that really wore out the engine as well. That car's had one new engine since then, and then sadly its first outing, it had a brand new engine fitting. It had everything put back, you know, to run in the homologated run. First time out, a couple of quid spark plug. The end dropped off of it, destroyed a cylinder.
Oh, it's always the way, isn't it? I remember I'm good friends with Wiltra Goethe. He's a lovely lad, and I was commentating on something at Brands Hatch when he was racing there as well, and I had a chat with him when their session had finished in the afternoon and my commentary duties were done. And he was saying that when they got down Pilgrim's Drop, before they got to Hawthorns at the right, they were touching nearly 180 in that car, and they were doing, get this, the straight that's not even a straight at Brands Hatch, they were doing nearly 150 before they started braking for Paddock Hill Bend. Now, if I'm approaching Paddock Hill Bend, I wouldn't do 50, let alone add another 100 onto that, because that is just a scary... This was in the wet, by the way. This is a scary prospect, but anyone that knows Will knows he's an absolute character. He's the calmest guy in the world to speak to, but behind the wheel he's an absolute lunatic. Anyway, there is a motor race going on. I think we should get back to be fair, Ryan. We've got Mike just letting us know now that the positions are changing, and of course the BMW now ahead of the Porsche. Car 127 overtakes car 977. There has been a penalty as well. Now, if I can remember which of the many channels we get in the this championship, I'll have a look. But we'll... oh, Mike's done the wonderful thing of bringing it on screen. Can you tell that I'm absolutely flustered right now? There we go. Cars 977 and 22 on lap 285. No further action there. Cars 42 and 99 on lap 284. There is a 15-second time penalty for car 99 for causing a collision. And that is the Race Anywhere Some Sport Pro car, which you were saying before, Ryan, you quite like the look of.
Yeah, well, they've obviously been in the naughty box. We also had a little bit earlier as well, when we were sort of reminiscing about ye oldie days. The 322, they did end up with a 15-second time penalty for their incident with the Joe McCauley, the FFS racing car. So that is what happened to them. The 322 will obviously drop down the order, and that's what the stewards deemed from that slightly tricky sort of accident that came on. But yeah, for the 127, they made the move, and there you go. Now that they can have the the straights to themselves, they're not being governed by the Porsche anymore. You just start to pull away and pull away. As a Porsche driver, it's probably the saddest thing. Once you've dropped out of that slipstream range of someone, or you don't have maybe even to you backmarket cars to protect you around, that's it. Once you're past at a track like this, you don't really have many huge braking zones or long sweeping corners that you can necessarily use the great brakes and the great handling that car's got, because over the mountain, like all this sections, as we've said before, it's kind of a single file. You get your pace governed by the car in front. You could be 2 inches off their bumper. Comes to the straight, it doesn't mean anything. The Porsche here is a car that can qualify greatly, but in a race they always just seem to struggle unless they get something really going well for them.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, the main point about Bathurst is the fact that while it may be single file over the mountain, you've got to then consider how difficult it is just to get over the mountain at the sort of pace that these guys are doing. It's absolutely mad when you combine it all together. During our reminiscing as well, we've actually gone into the final 2 hours of this race here, Ryan. So 10 hours completed here at the mountain, at wonderful Mount Panorama. of course known to you and me as Bathurst. We look right now at the 322 Bentley. This is being driven by Bogoroditsky, and he has got, well, only a couple of tiny margins in front of him to the number 164 car, which is the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, the GTWR R8G Academy white machine, and it's Alexandre Herbignaud driving that machine. I wonder if he is any relation to Christophe Herbignaud that used to race in Formula 3s on iRacing, because I commentated on him a lot and he was an absolute star. So if he's anywhere near as quick as his namesake, he'll do all right. Flashing lights from the Bentley, obviously trying to put the pressure on that little bit, because that 127 BMW now of Biotto, now he is clear of the Porsche behind. He's going to start trying to reel these guys in if they fight for even just 1 or 2 laps and lose a bit of time.
Yeah, well, that 13-second gap, as soon as you do really start battling, start slowing each other up, that gap can erase in, 2, 3 or 4 laps, depending on how much you are battling. The 51 as well, they had, I believe, like a 13-second gap. That's the car that's driven all the way back up into the top 10, currently with an 11-second gap, so they're slowly reeling themselves in. But here you go, this is kind of what happens now over the mountain. The 322, they've got to stay as close as they can, while you're also fighting the aero wash, from running this close. The front aerodynamics of the Bentley, as much as the wing sticks up higher than the Aston Martin in front, the front is just completely gone, and the drivers will start to feel that. You got to be careful down through the dipper. The walls will creep in on you. It becomes a lot tighter than you necessarily think, especially when you've got an Aston Martin filling your windscreen, because you can't see where the edges of the corners are. You're just kind of hoping that that the car in front takes the perfect line and you follow them, and then it's the long old stretch down the Conrod straight, the flashing of the lights, constant flashing, trying to put the Aston Martin off. And they've been in this position once before. It looked like the move was made, but they went slightly too deep, and they're going to try it again. They look to the outside. It's a long old way around. They're going to go hard on the brakes. It's going to be another late braking maneuver. Can they get it stopped in time? Yes, they can the 322. This time the move has stuck. Position gained for the 322 up into 17th.
Yeah, lovely tidy move that as well, and you could see that he was trying to line that up in his head for quite a while. The Ferrari actually of DeSalvo there, just getting past what has now suddenly become lap traffic in the form of the Aston Martin. But that was great stuff by Bogoroditsky, the Polish driver, doing very well indeed. Here's another Bentley and another Polish driver actually, Jakub Charkop in the Triton Racing Bentley in 28th position at the moment, trying to chase down the number 94 Honda, which is 2 cars in front of them. Obviously the Porsche that we saw before, the 977 machine, is the only thing between them. Blue flags waved and they pull over to one side, and race leader just behind them as well, so blue flags there for the race leader overall. This is going to be interesting to see how this works out, because the Bentley will not want to give up a single inch of the road here. But with the race leader on your tail, if there's any cars you've got to sort of make way for, that is the most important one. That's the one everyone will remember if you mess it up. But he's got a bit of breathing room now, actually, because the 977 Porsche is the car that's got to worry about that before them. So maybe here he can try and get onto the back of that number 94 HPD Jazz Pro Honda. The driver behind the wheel of that right now is Cardin Liu, sharing the car with Zach Patterson, Ben Kriener and Hugo Ohaski. 3 Honda NSX Evos in that class today, 2 of them HPD Jazz Pro, and then of course the other one, the Race Anywhere SimSport Pro car that got the penalty just recently. But now look, suddenly the Bentley, well, if it wasn't filling the mirrors and blocking out the sun before, it's very much doing so now.
Yeah, and that's really where the Bentley shines, is over the mountain. It's not going to win the outright speed contest down the straights, but you can stay so close to it. And yeah, the flashing the lights from the race leader behind, they obviously wanted to get through. They know that they can't lose too much time. They've got a comfortable lead, yes, but we mentioned that 0.3 of a second keep going around. It could lose easily a second. It's going to be too wide, clipping the inside curb. The 10 is very unsettled. Manages to get the car back pointing the right way. They're going to look potentially for the cutback. It'll be the outside, then we'll give them the inside for the last corner. It's going to be a great move as long as they hold it down. It's going to be a drag race to the final corner for the big Bentley. On the inside it's going to be had, and it's position gained for the 10 for Triton Racing. A great move, set that up nicely.
How on earth did Charco move ahead of that Honda after having a moment like that into the chase. That's fantastic. The fact that the car looked so out of shape when he kissed that curb and really wiggled its way in there on the brakes, somehow he turned that into an overtaking manoeuvre. That just shows you the skill of these drivers, what they can deal with. You can throw anything their way, and they'll just turn it into a complete advantage for you. It's unbelievable, but great stuff. And now the 94 Honda has to move out of the way for the race leader, but doesn't. Just cutting the nose off the race leader there for a second. That was a very, very scary moment for the 63 Lamborghini. Driver at the wheel right now is Giorgio Simonini, and he is not going to be the happiest bunny in the world right now with that one from the 94 Honda of Lou. But you know, Lou doesn't want to lose time. Get it, Lou? Lose time to the Bentley just in front, because while you can still see the target that you're chasing, you can sort of feel a little bit more confident in the way that you chase after it. But right now they are going to have to concede to the race leader in a moment, and I think that is it's going to be a big change to the mental advantage that the Bentley has right now.
Yeah, and then also the Bentley, if they can time it just that little bit better to where, you know, where they let the race leader through with no time loss or minimal time loss to them as well, ideally on a straight or just, you know, coming into the braking zone. Ideally what you would want now is the leader to be right behind you so that they get by, you know, and they've got a little bit of a gap coming into the braking zone. You lose minimal time looking in the background as well. I think the race leader's still caning on that Honda. The Honda's still got the foot welded to the floor. They don't really want to let go of the Triton racing car, but eventually they're going to have to let the leader through, as they do going up into the chase. Leader goes through, and that you know, I think that will put a little bit more of a gap between them and the Honda behind.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pivotal now to see how Jakub Charkot lets the leader by and where he gets that done, because like you say, the gap has really opened up. It's over 2 seconds now to Cardin Lou behind. BMW has disappeared ahead of them as well, so the Bentley's not really got too much to worry about right now. 27th place for the number 10 car, just holding on in there at the minute. They're surrounded by a bunch of all of the other manufacturers. It literally looks like a list of one from each. You've got a Ferrari a couple of positions ahead, followed by a Lambo, an Audi, an Aston. Behind them you've got a Honda, a Porsche, a BMW and a McLaren, so there's almost one of every manufacturer in there. In fact, I think other than maybe Lexus's, there actually is. So fantastic to see that we do have that variation. We spoke earlier about the balance of performance and the way that these cars all look very different, they all sound very different. You can watch them go around the same corner and see that they all behave very differently, but still, the ultimate pace can be so similar in all of them. It just comes down to driver preference, maybe the circuit, maybe how a driver reacts to a certain way a setup affects the car. GT3 racing is just a beautiful thing in my eyes, and long may it continue, because I think it's probably the most exciting category in the world, although I'm not allowed to show any bias to the trucks I was commentating on today.
It is probably one of the most competitive, you know, when you see even in the real life, you know, SRO regions, when whole fields are, you know, the top 10 are covered within a second, and then you take that to the esports where, you know, obviously there's so much more time to practice, there's so much more time to you know, sort of really nail that setup and really get on with the car, and then you see whole 30-40 car grids covered by not, you know, just over 1 second, and that is a scary prospect to think, is that you've got all these cars, all these people, manufacturers, setups, balance of performance, and the difference is basically the blink of an eye when they come to the line.
Yeah, it certainly is, and again, it just shows you how much endurance racing has changed, and not just even in the esports world, but you know, in the real world GT World Challenge, you see the cars just go on what is effectively a 3, 6, 12 or 24-hour sprint race. You know, they're at such an incredible pace all the way around these events, and the cars are that reliable that the drivers just absolutely push them to the very end. They do not think, oh, let's save the engine or let's save the tyres. You know, they'll just go for it, because that's what you have to do. The level of competition is so high, and it's the same in esports now as well. Here's Mohamed Thasbi in the 7.9 Flash Axle Ferrari. Car 21 is currently in 34th place. As whoa, he's actually just had a big moment down Skyline. Mike has very rightly pointed out he's got 2 rigs, seemingly, where he is there. Now, I can't even get 1 rig in my office, to be honest with you. I have to slide it under my desk to make it work. It's a very versatile setup, but I've got two desks and 2 PCs, but yeah, half a rig, I think. I have to move it. But yeah, 2 rigs in 1 room there. That's quite interesting. That's what we'd call in the mid 90s and early 2000s a T car.
Yeah, well, I've as a bit of a scary moment there for the Ferrari, does manage to save it. That is probably one of the worst feelings as a driver when the car's gone light underneath you. You've taken to the escape road and you're trying to save it because you know that the bumps over there potentially will send you off. But my rig is everything. My rig is also my computer, my desk, and my everything, because I just don't have the room. So commentating from you right now, sat in a KTR bucket racing seat with all the rig gear and everything. I just take the steering wheel off because that kind of gets in the way a little bit of the deck. But yeah, it's as well the rigs that you see, you know, on the cameras, the sort of the vast differences as well. We've seen single screens, triple screens, you know, like Florian Bonchos, for example, he's got a triple screen. We've seen some ultra wides, like the super ultra wides, for the people who are really fancy. But it does show though that you know, it's not necessarily the gear that you've got, it's how well you gel with the car.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I always say it about myself, even though people see my setup and they're like, oh, you've got 2 PCs. I mean, Mike's got like 14 or something like that he's got on the go right now. something daft. But in my case, it's all the gear, no idea, to be honest with you. But even still, I totally agree, though. You know, I used to bolt my wheel to my desk, and when I just used to get fed up of just bolting it back on or moving it around whenever I had to commentate or race, you know. It'd just be like, oh, do I have to do it again? And whenever my friends would pop on and be like, oh, do you want to come on and do some laps for a bit? Or just, are you going to race in this tonight? It's like, oh, I can't be bothered. And that used to be really simple compared to now. Slide in the rig from the corner of the room under the desk, move the monitors forward, then plug everything in, then make sure it's all lined up properly. Yeah, now it's a pain in the backside, but I do it more often. Anyway, again, it's great to see these drivers with all of their different setups. The beautiful white Puma gloves there by Jordan Grant Smith, even though it does slightly look like he's giving us the finger right now. The Race Anywhere SimSport Ferrari. Sorry, it's not Ferrari, is it? Oh God, I can't get that wrong. It's a Honda, clearly. The 32nd place machine. It's a car that's been in the wars, and it's had its moments over the course of this race, hasn't it, really, at this point, Ryan?
It's definitely had its moments, and the other thing was that was Jordan Grant Smith at the wheel, long-time friend of mine. Me and him basically started out in ACC around about the same time. He continued, with his esports venture, and I went into commentating instead. But obviously, Jordy will only have to have the finest white gloves, because that is his style. Yeah, you have to have style when racing, but. Yeah, I was talking to him before their stint, and he was saying that it's just been one of those days, but they're still all in high spirits, still in high hopes. You've just got to push on, make the best of what you can, finish as high as you can, and you know that you've still got a whole season ahead of you. As much as round one might have gone wrong, the thing is you can always take what happened, take that away, turn it from a negative into a positive of, we have to work with this. Maybe they don't gel with the car right well. Maybe it was just one of those days for one of the drivers, and at the end, I think that team as well, they'll progress over the season.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's tough to be on the back foot straight away when a championship gets underway, but the thing is, we always remember how people bounce back from a sort of setback, not how the setback comes about. Car 1 is into the pits, but this is now 301st lap of the race. We have completed 300 laps at Mount Panorama, and that in itself seems absolutely bonkers. Giorgio Simonini there, showing us portrait in landscape, apparently, but he's apparently a very, very tall bloke. 6'6", Mike's telling me right now, behind the scenes. Unbelievable. So he needs to be in portrait mode just to make sure that you can fit him all in.
well, you can see his head actually sticks up a little bit from the race seat. But yeah, if that's a race seat similar to me, then I can tell how tall Simonini is, because if it looks a very similar seat to what I've got, I am nowhere near poking over the top of that. In fact, my head is slightly lower than the head guards, but I'm a little bit short.
Well, even Mike in the background there said that he's short, so everybody's tall to him, but this guy's genuinely tall. So he's a bit of a long boy, is Giorgio Simonini, but he's also a fast boy, it seems. And he's doing a great job with his teammates as well, of course, Jordan Sherritt and Gianfranco Giglioli. Isaac Price, though, now back into second place, with Arta Camera taking over the #1 BMW for BS Competition. BMW team BS Competition, I should say. A team that are always very interesting to follow on social media. They have some fantastic people that work behind the scenes on their social media, I must say. A lot of these teams do, you know, there's a lot of great banter, especially across the likes of Twitter and Instagram with these teams. You know, everybody all interacts, and that's one of the wonderful things. You know, the racing itself is in such a digital world that, you know, to then take all of the communication that goes on across these social media platforms and in such an active way, there's a great community behind sim racing. But even when you just focus on one championship or one series, you see that even there alone there is a great group as well. As we look at Maciej Malinowski, and he's in VR actually, which is not something you often see at a competitive level, is it, Ryan?
No, but if I remember, Malinowski, he often races in VR. It's kind of you know what the man does, but what he can do with the car, with some setups, and especially with the Porsche, you know, when you see him, is absolutely phenomenal. You can see him, you know, having to fight the wheel all the time, and you see the snaps there from the McLaren. It always feels like Malinowski likes the force feedback so high that he feels every single sort of grain through the steering wheel, which you know, a lot of people would that'd tire you out entirely. But nope, for the driver of the Yas Heat SRO 22 team, he's that just seems to be the norm for this driver. We've seen it numerous times, even in other races that I've commentated on. It's just his style.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you know, when you get direct drive wheels that can put out as much force as, well, direct drive wheels can in this modern age, you know, a lot of the time it seems a bit of a waste not to use all of it. But at the same time, it's sometimes unnecessary to use all of it. You know, the amount of power they can put out is pretty scary, and obviously you don't want to risk injury either. I know a number of people that have been injured by direct drive wheels, but, you know, it comes down to your own responsibility whether you hang on if you're going to have an accident or not. And it's quite interesting to see. On a bit of a tangent, I actually had a driver that races in the real world on a championship that I commentate on here in the UK. He needed to use a sim to try and learn one of the circuits in the cars they were using, and he came round to my house and tried it out, and he was actually saying it's quite intriguing that you can get that immersed in it, that there is actually sometimes that fear factor there of putting the car in the wall if you have really high force feedback as well. I imagine that's the same for a number of drivers, but obviously you can feel, like you said, Ryan, every grain, every little stone in the road, you can feel every little bit of it. Some drivers really want that. Others want to just slightly dial it in enough so there's a limit to it. But yeah, I'm under the impression that the more you can feel, the more you know when the car is going to break away and misbehave. But depends how much you want to risk the sort of the wheel hurting your wrists or killing your arms after a long run like this.
Yeah, well, that was sort of the first thing that I had to learn when I got a direct drive, was the moment to let go. There is, you know, plenty of times when you still think that you might be able to save this, and even necessarily sometimes, even in a, you know, in a real car, obviously not a GT3 racing car. I don't have that amount of money, but you still hang on because you think you can save it, but maybe sometimes not. But as well, once again, looking at the other setups that our producer was telling us, Kevin Scolari with the ultra wide as well. That's gives him the best possible view with the 91 running wide just before Skyline. But then actually the number 5 Bentley has also had problems, and it might be a spin for the number 5. Oh!
Well, that's what it looks like when a housing estate takes off, everybody. The Bentley clatters into the dipper down the hill there. That was a horrible, horrible impact. Side on as well, really flung the car in the air. I'd be intrigued to know what that has done to the steering, and of course how that machine feels right now. You can see it sort of bobbling around as it comes out of Forest Elbow. But that is not good, to say the least. That's a big understatement, I must admit, but that was a hell of a moment, wasn't it? All of a sudden just really unfolded very, very quickly, didn't it, Ryan? And then the next thing you know, you've got an absolute postcode in the sky.
Well, I thought the 191 was going to have a much bigger problem than it necessarily did. You know, Kevin Scolari managed to keep that car going. When you've got 2 wheels on the grass, 2 wheels on the road, obviously the grip levels are completely unbalanced, and you're bouncing along. The cars are not really designed for that. It'll want to try spit you out and spin you around. It looked like, you know, the number 5 had that incident, took to the escape road, but just like I said earlier, you're downhill, you're in a front-engine car, the weight has gone off the rear, and and gravity and the weight transfer is working against you. Just the number 5, Moreira, just couldn't really save the Bentley. Gravity had taken over at that point, and into the wall they went, and then gravity was defeated with the Bentley flying up into the air. I have never seen a Bentley come sideways towards the camera before, but, well, now I have.
I wondered why the sun disappeared. But yeah, that's what we call a total eclipse, everybody. But yeah, the big old Boatley somehow continuing as well. It was a hell of a whack that it had into the wall, and we have the AK Esports guys in the chat as well. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us once again. We love your work. But yeah, somehow Fidel Moreira has, well, somehow got away with that. And I mean, the car probably feels like absolute death to drive right now. You can see the way that it's moving around a little bit. Obviously the ping contributing slightly to that, but before it was a lot smoother. As here we have another look back at it then. So coming through McPhillamy Park, just clipping the curb on the right, nice and smooth on the way in, and it just straightens up. It just straightens up, and you could tell he tries to correct it, and then as it bounces, oh, there you go. It actually looked a lot more dramatic from the other angle, you know, so I don't think it's actually done as much to the car as we would have initially thought, but you could tell he could feel the car going, couldn't he? And then he straightened up and thought, right, stuff this, we're going in a straight line.
Yeah, well, that turn has a bit of a bump on the inside, as it were, as the wipers go. You can tell the driver's trying to probably frantically set the pit strategies and set everything else back up, as they're pressing every single button on the center console, thinking, where is it, where is it, where is it? But you can go over that if you're on the brakes. You can lock up, and that will obviously put a horrible feeling through the steering wheel. And you've got to make that decision: do we continue going, risk a spin, or straighten up? They elected to straighten up, but because it had thrown them over that curb, then you've completely lost the car by then. Back end slid out. It was only really damage to the rear left, off that wall. It kind of softly touched the tire wall, coming back down to earth on the right, and continued on. So obviously the driver's not necessarily thinking it's not race ending, that they have to pit right now, but continuing on as another race control report comes through. Cars 911 and 27 on 293, lap 293, 5-second time penalty for the 27 for causing that collision.
Yeah, indeed, that was the McLaren 720S of SEL Esports Ben Q Mobius, driven by Kevin Leon, Jeremy Barre, Steve Favre, and Hamza Belhassan, or Belhassan, I should say. They will now obviously serve that when they come into the pits. That's one of the good things as well with this sort of championship, is that we don't have to remember those penalties right to the end of the race. They just serve them there and then in the pits, and then they're done with. So as soon as they've come back out again, they're back on that sort of stalemate that they had when they went in. Now, one thing I wanted to talk to you about, Ryan, we're not going to go off on too much of a tangent here, I hope. I mean, we might do.
He says.
Yeah, I was going to say, right, well, let's see how many words we can cram this into. The wall on the exit of the chase. Discuss. That one.
Yeah. I mean, I like it in the sense of safety, and sometimes in certain races, in the iRacing, the historic feat, or sort of yearly tradition of jumping the wall.
Yeah. I actually commentated on that last Monday, actually, the touring car race that someone did.
It is a good advancement for safety. I'm not really. I wasn't really that flustered, with the track changes that it's seen over the years in the name of safety. It's not changed as much as some tracks necessarily will. It's for me, anything really that that will add a bit of safety to the drivers, so that we can have this close racing, and when the incidents do happen, everyone kind of walks away, can always be a good thing. Recently they're changing, if I believe they're changing parts of the Red Bull Ring after the MotoGP accident, which is some people were a little bit dismayed at the addition of 2 extra chicanes for that, but at the end of the day, it keeps everyone safe. It stops all these big accidents, and not that long ago, it was that accidents in motorsport were quite frightening, and you had big injuries and cars that were completely destroyed. And the GT3 cars now are so strong It was at this circuit. Do you remember the Audi, I believe, that spun out and then was hit at basically full force into the driver's side, and that was the most horrible noise to ever hear over a broadcast, was the sound of shattering carbon fiber.
Yeah,
but then the next shot was the driver getting out and being fine.
Yeah, it's incredible, the safety of these modern cars. I think it was John Hindhaugh actually said himself, that's a bad noise. He was not joking. Absolutely horrible sounding thing, and it was a massive impact as well. That's a big impact in itself. How did they both get away with that? Andrea Capoccia somehow did not go absolutely spearing off the road then, and neither did the BMW that he tapped. That is usually something where we would see both cars completely wrecked. Sometimes, you know, we get things, I don't want to say the word netcode, but there it is. It's on the table now. Sometimes you can get incidents that maybe get a little bit exaggerated by contact like that. You know, it throws the cars off in different directions. That is one of the very few moments where it actually benefits the fact that it goes, oh, you know what, these cars are both fine. They're going to continue in a straight line. They definitely got away with that there. Flippy neck.
Yeah, that was a hard catch from both of the drivers there. So the Mercedes, the AMG AK car, really catching up. They see the Porsche ahead, even though with that 15-second time penalty, they want to get around them. They just want to get further up the road, further to anyone really in their classes. There's the big chunk of silver class cars directly in front of the 88, but maybe not necessarily expecting the closing speeds that they had committed to the outside, just that 10th or so too late, and the light tap. But both cars continue on. It will definitely be in a moment where the drivers would have breathed in through their teeth, and you saw continue on. Look in the mirror. Speaking of looking in the mirror, the 977 goes for a bit of an off-track venture, continues on, but we've seen how dangerous that can be.
You say breathe in through your teeth, they breathe out through your backside, don't you, in those moments? It's an absolute nightmare. Just very quickly coming back, I know that we look, well, I love these tangents, I'm sure you'll agree as well, to be fair, Ryan, but the wall after the exit of the chase, I was always intrigued as to how that actually makes it safer, bringing the wall closer rather than having it further away. And I couldn't really think of much of an argument for it, but I suppose the cars haven't got sort of long enough to go off the road to make it a massive accident. Then again, I would have thought it'd funnel it down and keep them near the racetrack if they make a bit of a mistake on the exit. It's intriguing because there's no tyre wall on it either, so it's much like most of the others. It's solid concrete.
I think they might have even been expecting the cars to come in at more of an angle, because of the kink. Maybe they're trying to expect crashes where cars are necessarily going through the gravel trap sideways and just trying to sort of stop them that way. As he says, it's one of those, it sort of makes no sense. It'll make sense to someone. And then we're going to see a move here, the 164 filling the windscreen, the 563 looks at the inside. Look at how much they tried to look back to the inside, but unsettles the Lamborghini, and then you kind of have to rodeo it back together. Yeah,
that was well, it is riding the bull, isn't it, really, with the Lamborghini? But yeah, it was certainly a very focusing moment indeed. This is our third place car, Arta Camera, in the BS Competition 2021 blue SRO machine, listed on our entry list as BMW Team BS Competition. He crosses the line to complete their 307th lap of this race around Mount Panorama. We're into the last 90 minutes of this race now, and I can tell you that is going to fly by very, very quickly as Bonacorsi looks back down the inside of the Aston Martin of Brioni. Nothing doing there, though, on the way into Quarry, and now he's going to sit behind as they now go up into the cutting, hard onto the brakes, let the car dive down into the camber on the left-hand side, and then guide it over the multiple crests here as they go into Reed Park, over the crest of the hill, start flicking the weight back down to the left, and then, of course, the incredible McPhillamy Park. Such a fantastic place to watch GT3 cars and watch any form of racing. Flying around here again on the exit, plenty of curb into Skyline, dive it down, balance the car on the way in, go down through the gears nice and gently, don't upset the car too much, and then of course down through the dipper, a massive jump down, mind the wall on the right, cut it close to the wall on the left, and then hug the wall on the right hand side, but be careful because it kinks out slightly. It's smooth all the way around, and then all of a sudden it tightens up, and there's a bit of a pointy bit on the wall that you have to stay clear of. Forest Elbow as well, navigated very, very nicely. But Marcello Bonacorsi doing everything he can to stay with the Aston, but I'll tell you what, Brioni looked really strong over the mountain that time round, Ryan.
And the 127 as well. They were briefly in the mirror at the start of the mountain. It looks like they've had a little bit of an issue through Forest Elbow and a drop back off. But yeah, that Aston Martin that time was completely hooked up. I thought the Lamborghini might have had, you know, the little bit of the advantage over the mountain, being able to sort of use that rotation that they have underneath their underneath their right foot, for example. You know, you kind of drive that car completely balancing the weight transfer of it, but yeah, the Aston Martin managed to hook it up and just give themselves enough of a safety margin that coming in, if they can do that a few more times, you just need to get outside where you break the toe, and then if you can be, you know, that sort of level of consistency, that's when you start to pull away. But the 563 says that is not all that I've got. I'm going to catch back up to you.
Yeah, that's it. It's how you sort of play ping pong, as a fellow commentator of mine once said about these. You really got to ace the serve or just continue to return the ball back to them as hard as you can. And the Lamborghini right now, a very, very different car to the Aston Martin it's chasing, but still very equal on performance when you put these two drivers right together. Here is the number 51 Ferrari, hidden behind those garages somewhere, with, well, who was actually the last driver at the wheel of that? It was De Salvo, wasn't it? Giovanni De Salvo brings the car into the pits. And he has done 31 laps on this stint, and he may hand over the car. There hasn't been anybody during the race so far that has double stinted in that car, and that's completely understandable. But we go back to this battle between the 563 Lamborghini and the 164 Aston Martin. Mid-engined 5.2 litre V10 versus front-engined 4 litre. It's the twin-turboed V8, isn't it, in the front of the Aston? Yeah,
it's the twin-turbo. It's the car that ACC has you know, mimics the sound a little bit with the upshift. They have a little bit of a pop, as it was, but if you've ever heard this car in real life, that upshift pop, nope, sounds more like a shotgun going off.
It makes you wince.
It is incredibly loud, is the anti-lag on that car, just to keep those turbos spooled up, because if you let them drop off, I mean, we've seen this car at race starts, it always struggles a little bit. So once you're on the roll, you need to keep them, you know, boosted up. But yeah, the Lamborghini looking ever closer each time. You know, just that 1/10. They need to keep edging closer and closer on the straights, because they know that over the mountain it actually looks like advantage to the Aston Martin.
It really does, and you're absolutely right on the noise that car makes. You know, there is insane amounts of anti-lag on it. Every single upshift, it makes you wince. It really makes you wince. My brother and I were lucky enough to go and watch the British GT testing at Oulton Park. We only live about 5 miles from the place. We went and stood on the pit wall during the testing there when the Aston Martin Vantage, this current iteration, first made its break into the British GT scene, and we saw a bunch of them all going out and testing, no livery on them as well, all just solid carbon. They looked unbelievable, but all of them making their way out of the pit lane, just juddering and rattling away on the anti-lag. The noise, like, I mean, I love my air shows, you know, I love loud jet noise, I love loud cars, but I've never actually felt like my ears actually hurt from a noise in motorsport, except for when that Aston Martin struggled to get away and it was just consistent backfire. It was like machine gun fire right in front of you, and we were only, what, 2 meters away from the car? It's deafening, absolutely deafening. But what a fantastic car the Aston is. It looks insane, sounds insane, and it goes insanely as well.
The only time I ever saw it was Brands Hatch. Same thing. It was a British GT race, and I was stood on the hill after you've gone through turn 2, sort of, you know, through Druids, and then
Graham Hill.
The run down to the hill, the Graham Hill, and where we were stood was exactly, and I mean exactly, where the Aston Martin upshift. Every single lap would the Beechstein car come through, deafen us, and then go off.
Oh yeah, I mean, that was the same thing. We tried to get to the upshift point for a lot of the cars on the exit of Old Hall at Oulton Park as well, where they've got the big run down the avenue, because the Bentley especially, actually, the first iteration of the Bentley was like that as well. You know, you get that shotgun sound from the exhaust every single time. Jordan Sherritt there, just having to negotiate a little bit of traffic, but still getting through it very, very nicely indeed. He leaves the Mercedes and the Bentley to fight amongst the scraps behind them. That was the number 10 Bentley, if I have got it right. And to be fair, that number 10 car was looking a little bit lonely earlier on, wasn't it? And the Mercedes in front is not for position, actually, right now, with Dominic Blyer at the wheel. but still he's going to want to get past it as soon as possible. The Aston Martin behind them as well is not for position either, so it can be a bit frustrating when you get to that point. You know, nobody around you is anyone that you're fighting for position. You're just sort of wasting time, as it feels like, with the cars around you, you know, thinking that you're getting held up. As we see, I mean, my car producer is very entertained by Marcello Bonacorsi there, but he's a flamboyant Italian and he's in a flamboyant Italian car. What more could you want?
Yeah, trying to dart, you know, this way, that way to just put off the driver in front, because when you've been running this close and this sort of consistent now, he knows that, you know, it's not going to happen over the mountain. There's a bit of a tap there for the 563, a touch of the wall. Might unsettle the car a little bit, but that's when you start picking up that small amounts of damage that A, will hurt the pace, B, just make your pit stop that little bit longer. But I think it's getting to the point now for the Italian that they've realised, obviously, it's not going to happen over the mountain. They have to do something. They're just trying to make it where the 164 takes their eyes off the road for just that 1 second, just that small thing of where, you know, the driver might look in the mirror and think, oh, are they going to go for it? And then you outbrake yourself. I think that's what's going to happen. Because at the minute, it just seems that they're running this close, and it's going to be the first person to blink, really. And the 127 behind as well, the Mobileye the BMW, sorry. They're looking at this battle. They've got the best position, really, because they're just sort of waiting for something to happen, possible follow through. But another look up the inside wasn't to be. I think the Aston Martin's going to defend it. They are going to stays all the way down, jolts to the outside, back to the inside. There's a Lamborghini, but it's just a little bit too far back.
Oh, Bonacorsi is absolutely fantastic to watch, really flinging this car around. I mean, if the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo didn't look angry enough on its own anyway, Bonacorsi is making it look like a very, very aggressive car right now. But Brioni doing a wonderful job at keeping the Aston Martin ahead, making it as wide as possible right now. And this is very quickly going to become a 3-car fight, I think, because Biotto just behind them is closing in very, very quickly himself. Car in 23rd place, the number 127 machine of Mobileye Jean Alesi Esports Academy. And I apologise, it's Blotto, not Biotto. I apologise. I thought it was an eye that had slightly blurred into one, but that is my eye blurring it into one. Anyway, 3-car fight, 3 very different cars. I can't wait to see how this unfolds, because now Bonacorsi is in that horrible position that we all hate here, Ryan, where he's in a battle trying to overtake somebody, and now he's got to focus on his mirrors as well, because the car behind him is suddenly closed right in.
The middle position is never an easy one in sim racing or in any racing. You've got to make, you know, all of the moves even more calculated, because you go for a move, you're opening the door to the person behind you, you end up outbraking yourself trying to go for a move. We've seen it happen in the chase. You know, people go back, the switchback happens, and then you could very easily find yourself stuck behind the BMW again, and then that's going to just, you know, be even more infuriating for the Lamborghini, because if they want to go back for the car that's in their class, they'd have another car to pass. It's going to be another long old run down the Conrad Straight that might be a tiny bit closer this time around. The slipstream's going into effect. You could basically hide the Lamborghini all the way behind the Aston Martin. They pull out to the inside. They've got to be careful not to clip that curb. We've seen it happen a couple of times. The Aston Martin's still on the inside. It is late on the brakes for the 563. Gets it done for the corner, and there you go. Finally, the move has been made for the 563 VS Racing by Ballers Esports team up into 21st.
And to be honest, he needs to now bolt away from this as quickly as he can, because every single corner that 127 BMW is held up behind Brioni is an extra corner where there is a slight advantage for Bonacorsi. He's going to have to push, push, push now and get that Lamborghini screaming away. That 5.2 litre V10 will certainly give him the poke that he needs to get away for it, or get away from it. If I could speak English, that'd be a good thing as a commentator, wouldn't it? But still, again, we've got 2 very different cars battling out now behind him, the Aston Martin and the BMW. V8 engine versus straight 6. Single turbo on that BMW straight 6 as well, as opposed to the twin turbo Aston Martin. But that BMW, I mean, as much as the front end has caused a lot of controversy, and I definitely still hate it and think the back end of it looks like a Lexus, the actual car itself, in terms of its performance, you know, you can't knock it. It's been such a good all-rounder, as a lot of big BMWs always have been in GT3 racing.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, BM have really put, you know, everything that they can into that car. You really can feel, though, that the car was really designed for you know, for the VLN, for Nürburgring, just the way it handles and the way the gear ratios are. I know a couple of people who've raced it in ACC kind of say, what are these gear ratios? Because the final, anything above sort of fourth, feels so long that it just feels like it falls flat on its face at some of the tracks with a really long straight, unless you've got any kind of slipstream. If you can get up into the rev range, you know, get up into the peak power, then it does okay for itself. But when you're on your own, it just feels a little bit sort of flat. But it was designed for a purpose. But yeah, I mean, thinking back, as much as the car was only, it seemed to be successful right at the end of its life. The big M6, that was a car that, you know, that was very advanced for the time, very interesting car to see. And just before they retired it, just before the M4 was, you know, basically brought in and they said, right, that's the new car, the M6 finally did what it was set out to do, and it won a VLN. I think it was Rover Racing, wasn't it, that won that just right at the end before they put it away into the museum, as it was. But I've driven the M6 a few times in ACC. It makes me laugh. It's a car that I drive just to have a big childish grin on my face, because it has turbo noises, it flutters and chutters at you, and the straight line speed is just hilarious, really. You get onto a long straight and you put your foot down and you watch Porsche drivers cry.
Yeah, you do indeed. And I was lucky enough actually to commentate on the Nürburgring 24 Hours where that car won as well, and I was a humongous fan of it. I was really happy to see one again, because it had been a long time since I'd seen one in person. To go into the garage and have a chat with the team and everything ahead of even qualifying, you know, I didn't even have an idea that that car was going to be as competitive as it was that weekend, and then to see them go and win the race from the commentary box was an absolute dream that weekend. It's still one of the best weekends I've had involved in motorsport. And, you know, the team deserved it. You know, that car has been around for a while. It's been around the block a few times. It's had its trials and tribulations. But as a big all-round GT car, it's just an absolute beast, isn't it? And again, just shows that you can have your nimble mid-engine to rear-engine supercars like your Lamborghinis, your Ferraris, your McLarens and Audis. But, you know, you can still build a big, beefy front-engine GT car and it be just as competitive a formula.
Yeah, exactly. As we look on the screen, this is one of your top three runners, the 62, Robbie Stapleford for the BMW G2 Esports. I've been looking at the stats provided us by Michael Hamlet, really, as well. This car, the 62, in fact, no, yeah, sorry, the 62 for the stint last go around, average lap time for them was a 2:02.3, but they have had the fastest time in the pits. It was a 10:52.166. That's overall that they have spent, and that is 2 seconds better than the 63. And it looks like, you know, the gap slowly has been reeling down for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, the car in front was even quicker on average over that last stint as well. The number one machine, 2:02.0, and like you said before, 0.3 of a second quicker on average compared to the leading Lamborghini, and that will add up to a hell of a lot in the long run. And the 62, like you said there, was the fastest in terms of their total time in the pits, so getting quite the advantage over everybody else. And I'll tell you what, Michael Hamlet, I must admit, is an absolute gem behind the scenes, as he always is. But one of the stats he's just posted for us here is the average lap time across the entire race. And get this, the number one car, their average lap across all stints is a 2:02.339. The 63 car, 12 thousandths of a second on average across over 300 laps of Bathurst. 12 thousandths of a second slower. You could not get it any finer than that. That's insane.
And then you got the 62, not only 62 thousandths off. Yeah. You've got to go to the 14 to get a car that is finally into a tenth, and they are just shy of 2 tenths, all the way down to the 149. There's 4 tenths, which is, you know, in this grid we might say 4 tenths is massive, but 4 tenths represented, you know, car to car is literally you would be on the bumper of the person. That is after, you know, the 300 plus laps that they've done. That is how close it is, and that's what I kind of love about the esports as well, is it's close right from the get-go, from the green flag to the finish. You know, in some real racing you might see some people spread out, cars happen, mechanical problems happen, driver fatigue, all of these. the esports people, they are relentless. All of these teams will keep going. As soon as the green flag drops, it's game time. And as soon as the checkered flag drops, then you breathe.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, there's barely any rest while you do just even a hot lap around here, even in practice. You know, every single lap is a brand new challenge, and that depends on the conditions. It depends on any damage to the car. If you've kissed the wall even on one of these laps and just slightly knocked something out of kilter, you don't know how the car's going to behave the next time you go over the top of the mountain. It can be a real stressful time. We look at Matteo Blotto right now in that 127 BMW, still on the back of Brioni in the Aston Martin, trying to just fill the mirrors right now. And he's actually being hurried up a little bit now because the number 1 BMW is right behind him, and he knows that the blue car will have to give way to blue flags very shortly. We've seen them actually really respect the blue flags quite early on as this race has gone on, but I think right now he just needs to still fill the mirrors of that Aston for as long as possible. The lights being flashed by the number 1 is practically part of that Mobileye car, and he's actually even looking down the inside right now, is Arthur Camera, and he is trying very hard to get past. And I think he needs to do this right now, doesn't he? He has to put this pressure on, because it looks like the 127 isn't going to let him through as soon as he wants him to here.
Yeah, and you saw that he, you know, the 127 dropped off. Just had that minute moment where they had to look in the mirrors, you know, think is the number 1 actually going to go up the inside there, and that dropped them all the way back. Or I say all the way back, you know, a couple of tenths off where they wanted to be. We're right on board. Bonnet cam for Arthur Camera for the you know, for the BS Competition 2021 blue car. They're gaining, and this is also a point that you get. Matched machinery racing is even, you know, it's that little bit harder sometimes as well, where, you know, unless you're in the slipstream, you don't have a speed advantage over your fellow person, as Arthur's having to fight the wheel of that car. You could tell that the weight was still wanting to transfer off as he had to throw it up the inside, but you know, you can't brake later than your opponent. You don't have any more necessarily handling of your opponent. It's all down to what your setup is and how comfortable you are in the car, and that can sometimes lead in the same for lapping, because if you're both very fast drivers, both in good pace, obviously the car in front, even if they are blue flags, they're not going to want to, you know, slow down and let their race go for you. You just get kind of stuck in this area.
Yeah, and that's the worst thing as well, when you feel like you're stuck in a race like this. You start to get in your own head a little bit and start to panic about what you could potentially do to continue to move forward. You know, as drivers, as competitors, you always want to move forward. That's the whole point in motorsport, isn't it? You know, you need to be going forward further than the other people are going forward, or faster than the other people are going forward. It seems very academic, but honestly, it can be a real difficult challenge to try and get your head around, as Jordan Sherratt in the 63 car has just done a 2017, I've been told, and actually Robbie Stapleford in the 62 car has just gone only 22 thousandths slower than that. A 201.755 for Sherratt and a 201.777 for Stapleford. These boys have suddenly turned it up a notch here, Ryan.
Well, you just about over that 1 hour marker, and then realistically, you know, a lot of people are turning it into a sprint race. They might have even, you know, said to their driver, you know, how does the car feel? How do the tires feel? Do you think that now we can push? Maybe we can gain something towards the end. And if they've turned around and said, yeah, I think we can, you know, the fuel's lower, let's just go for it now. It's completely, doesn't matter what the tires do, doesn't matter what the fuel loads do. We've got places to, you know, we've got places to gain, we've got places to do, and there you go. The best for this car entirety throughout the whole race was a 201.13, but it was a 201.7 last time around. So it still shows that the pace for these cars, it just doesn't drop off.
No, it really doesn't. It's absolutely insane pace from them. Great to see it once again as we now ride on board with the incredible sounding Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. That big 5.2 litre V10 lump in the back of it, making a hell of a soundtrack to what is going to be a wild ride over the top of the mountain here. Jordan Sherratt there, you see in the bottom left of your shot. Up through the cutting we go, over the crest to the right, balance the car nicely as we go into Reed Park. You have to turn in so early there because of the natural understeer in the way that the surface sort of shimmies the front of the car around. You have to throw it in absolutely throw it in early and just pray that the wall is still in the same place as it was before. Back through McPhillamy Park, down the hill, clip the curb on the right, get right up to the wall on the left, and then of course you have Skyline this way. Then that, you can see the rubber marks where the cars have really been leaning on those front tyres, down the dipper again. And as I said before, try and just clip that wall on the left-hand side. Be careful of the little kink in the wall on the right-hand side and get it nice and flat into Forest Elbow. Hard on the power and back down the Conrod Straight once more. And Jordan Sherratt, for the 318th time, has completed the mountain itself. Now he's just got the chase to worry about and then the final couple of corners. But again, just incredibly fast, Ryan, but it just looks really tidy from Jordan Sherratt, doesn't it? There's no over-the-top drama about it. There doesn't seem to be anything quite on the limit. It just looks clean fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it sort of has that feeling of a team, you know, and a car and a setup that are really gelling together. They've got the car dialed in exactly how they want it, or the drivers have got it dialed in exactly how they want it. And that lap was a 2:02.1, so you know, still the pace for that car just not falling off, as it says. But yeah, you know, with how smooth it was, there's no vicious corrections like we've seen from example from our fellow flamboyant Italian in the 563. It's, you know, there wasn't any hard movements on the wheel. And I was briefly reminded about the 900 as well, the SMP Racing Esports leader in silver. But yeah, there was nothing untowards on the wheel, which is normally the Lamborghini can be quite a car that, you know, it will want to bite you. It will want to have a bit of a nibble, especially over the mountain where it's so hard on the suspension, it's so hard on the driver and the setups. But yeah, for that team, it's just all smooth sailing really, and that is when you see those cars that can do that, that is where all the lap time comes from. When you think, how can they go that fast? Well, it's that fast. It's just being that 1% faster through every single corner.
Yeah, that's it. It's carrying that extra 1 mile an hour. It's having that extra millimetre closer to the wall and knowing how to manage curbs as well. I mean, there's a number of circuits all around the world where you learn how the curbs affect the cars. You know, you'll know if there's a certain bit that's a little bit more bumpy than other parts. And we see there, as Danilo goes up the hill out of Quarry, you can see that he got both of the left-hand wheels of the car over the curb on one side and then the right wheels of the car over the other side, almost straddling that curb along. Now, if he was to just let the left-hand wheels really rest up against that curb, it'd throw it off and lean it hard to the right and maybe unsettle the balance of it. So if you can negate that as much as possible and just keep the car as flat as you can, then you'll get a tidier exit. And like you say, Ryan, it's those tiny little adjustments, those tiny little differences that make all of, well, guess what? The difference over the course of a lap of Mount Panorama. And there's more circuits like that around the world, like I say, where chicanes are important. You know, you could dip your two right wheels just on the inside of a curb just to stop the car bouncing up in the air, just to try and cut it that little bit. And then there's other places where you avoid the curbs altogether, you know, and again, that then comes down to the car and more variables get piled on top of that. But a great looking lap here from Cherepinin in the 900 silver class Mercedes, and 5th overall as well. I mean, that's a top effort, to be fair. It's not often that you see silver cars as ridiculously high up the order as we can sometimes see them, but yeah, this is a really standout performance for me by the SMP Racing Esports car. A car that's been under the radar, actually, since we got on there, isn't it, really, Ryan? And no news is good news.
Yeah, the 900 had kind of, you know, I think for a while we thought that maybe the 110 was the leader of silver, but it was just kind of being shaken out by the pit stops. It's a 202.7 for the SMP racing car. But yeah, they've just been quiet, lapping around, and suddenly that 900's all the way up into 5th place. But the silver class as well, you know, still was heavily contested, and it still shows the pace of any driver, you know, pro esports or silver esports, what they really can do. I mean, I know when we had all the qualifying, as we've got, that is the Remwell and Esports Red Ferrari. It's the 71. It's had a big incident coming down the dipper, and the heavy damage on the front of that car, front and rear, I've seen. And well, so I think the face kind of tells it all as well from the steering. Look at how broken that steering is. The windscreen is ruined. The tracking's off. I think Ferrari will be getting a new order for some more parts. So Ferrari will be getting some more money but for the 71, that is really going to put the brakes on their charge forward. but the qualifying, I took part in the qualifying, couldn't get anywhere near.
Yeah, I never even bother, to be honest with you. I know I've got absolutely no chance. And to be fair, speaking of no chance, I'd trade that Ferrari in right now and see what value you can get on a brand new 296 GT3, to be fair. Because that car, it's a very exciting announcement, obviously, that the 296 GT3 will be coming to championships such as this. And obviously it will end up on Assetto Corsa Competizione. One of, if I'm honest, the best looking GT3 cars I've ever seen, based on the pictures that have been taken of it so far, especially in the testing livery that we've all seen. It is an insanely pretty Ferrari. Not the usual rear end you'd expect from a Ferrari GT car as well. It's very much against the norm of what we've seen before, but still, we know that Ferrari will provide a very, very good formula with that car. Anyway, we look back at Darragh McCormack in the Williams Esports Chillblast SRO Mercedes, car 55 at the moment. The highest placed of the two Williams Esports cars in the race, Moreira in the number 5 machine. Not having the easiest race, actually, that Bentley. We saw the big hit for them earlier, which damaged the car slightly. They don't seem to have lost too much since that moment, have they, Ryan?
No, you would have thought that that car would have dropped off a lot more, especially with the fact that they were flying through the air at one point. But it just obviously hasn't. The damage as well is modelled very well in ACC, and just having damage on your car might not necessarily affect the pace. It depends where the damage is. From aero damage cause understeer. If you get hit in the rear, causes your your rear diffuser to be damaged or broken. You'll get oversteer. Damage on the side kind of just makes you a little bit slower. So it might even be that just with that rear quarter damage, they've looked at the time that's to fix it, looked at the delta for the lap times on average that they're losing, have taken the decision that, well, if the car's not feeling any worse and we're only losing X amount, we'll lose too much fixing it. Let's just continue on. We have now actually ticked on to the under 1 hour mark. It's essentially become a sprint race to the line, but maybe the team has looked at that and just decided that that is the best call.
Yeah, indeed. I think it's incredible now that this is just going to be a flat out sprint. The final pit stops will be done, and everyone will settle down for what is going to be a real fight to the line. We look, though, at Darragh McCormack in this Mercedes being very, very potent indeed. And I've had the question in the YouTube chat saying, is that a spoiler that the 296 GT3 is coming to ACC? I don't really think it's even worth spoiling. I don't know, but I'd imagine it would do at some point. At the end of the day, it's a brand new GT3 car coming onto the scene. It will obviously compete in GT World Challenge, and anything that happens in GT World Challenge will be well virtually modelled here in the world of Assetto Corsa Competizione. So long as this sim continues to exist and GT World Challenge continues to exist, I think we'll see the 296 GT3 in the sim before too long. And I actually, again, as I always do with new GT3 cars arriving on the scene, I look forward to seeing how it initially gets on against other cars in the competition, because a number of them take quite a lot of development, don't they, Ryan, to sort of get into proper shape before they can be real top runners.
Yeah, well, like the BMW, that came in, and that's still kind of in a half testing phase. I remember when it was just being run in sort of test races. It was allowed to compete, but it wasn't sort of classified. And it'd be interesting to see the same with what happens with that Ferrari. I was of the same sort of venture as well when I first saw it. A friend of mine sent me a picture and says, have you seen this? But it was only of the rear end, and my actual reaction, because I didn't see any Ferrari badge or anything, I says, oh, is that a Corvette GT3 car? And he sort of looked at me and went, no, it's the new Ferrari. I'm like, oh, that is a stark difference from the normal Ferrari that we used to. But considering they're already in this game, already heavily represented, Ferrari will really want to show off their their new GT3 car, and I look forward to the day when we do get to see it in some sort of esports level.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be absolutely wonderful to have it as part of it. And I wish I could disagree and say, oh, it doesn't look like a Corvette. I think it kind of looks a bit like a Corvette. So I'm going to agree with you on that one, Ryan. There is another little bit of information from race control there. A warning to car 127 after an incident with car 77. That was the BMW that we were following earlier on, the 77 car being the Prime E-Racing McLaren. They were very close together on track, so obviously something Getting a little bit argy-bargy between them there. We're looking here at Maximilian Shea in the WPS Racing Team Porsche. Currently in 29th position in the 911. I love the sort of bronzy gold wheels on that car, actually. I'm a huge fan of gold wheels. I truly believe it gives you an extra 10 horsepower no matter what you're in. But I think that Porsche, blue with gold especially, looks very, very good right now. The Ferrari that's just got ahead of them is one of the Race Anywhere cars, I believe. Is it not?
It is, with the green striped livery of the Race Anywhere cars, I believe, as well. I saw the sort of their fellow, the 94 Race Anywhere Honda was in the pits as well. I thought they might come out of the track on the same point, but obviously not. We've seen those two Race Anywhere cars kind of sort of hug each other on the track. They've been going around for quite a while, following each other, and it's the battle of the Ferraris at the back. The 71, the Renwelton car, they had that big accident earlier on, coming down, you know, exactly here into the dipper. Have managed to fix the prancing horse and find themselves behind another prancing horse. And this is kind of what I mentioned earlier. You know, they'll be wanting to get back up the order. Everything in front of them is for their class, so it is still, you know, points on the table. But match machinery, it means that, you know, you don't necessarily have one defining factor over the car in front of you, you know, that you can use. Other than we were very fast at the start of the race. Yeah,
that's it. I mean, you can argue that maybe the driver is the only difference in these sorts of scenarios. I mean, we both know just how great one-make racing can be and how close it can be. And these two certainly getting very, very friendly right now as Orlando Rats looks like he was going to go for a move there on Clements down the inside. But you're very right there, actually, Ryan, that to mention that the cars ahead of them are all for their class. You know, it would be very frustrating for them to be on this sort of comeback drive to try and salvage something from the race and have 5 cars in front of them on the next couple of laps that were all cars from the pro class. You know, that would just be absolutely heartbreaking, because then it'd just be a case of holding station to the end. You know, not to say that teams ever give up, because, you know, these teams just don't, but, you know, I think in their minds, if that was the case, they would just pound around until the end and just take the points that they were given. Right now, though, they have the chance to change their sort of fate in this race, and they're going to try their very, very hardest to go and do it.
Yeah, well, they've got the 404 directly in front of them. The 949, another prancing horse, who's sort of all grouped together, is a long way up the way. It's 29 seconds as we just crossed the timing being 20 seconds actually. I tell a lie. It's sort of merged into one, but 20 seconds up the road. It's not impossible with 50 minutes left on the clock, but it means that they're going to have to take almost a second a lap chunk out of that 404. So they need to get around this 71, and they need to get around them fast and hope that they have some free air. You can see how much the 71 is pushing, running wide, potentially. You know, they're trying to get every single inch of track, and look what's behind them. Blue flag traffic. They're not going to want to let any one of these through, because that will really put the brakes on their own recovery drive.
Yeah, that's it. You need to think about the bigger picture all of the time in this race, and it's very, very easy to lose sight of that when you get yourself in the heat of battle around the cars that are directly in front of you and directly behind you on track. And right now that Mercedes is closing in double time on the back of the Ferrari, but they need to just make sure they don't get too distracted by it right now. That is the car, I believe, in 19th position, is it not? The 88 Mercedes of Amir Hosseini. And as you see there, Rats moves over to the right. Doesn't make it incredibly obvious that he was letting the Mercedes through there, actually. I would have thought he'd slow down a little bit sooner than that. He's got the BMW now behind him, and, well, he's gone off the road at the final corner. He's made a real meal of that, unfortunately, as Orlando Rats, and then more traffic makes its way through. And, well, look at that gap now, let alone with the 3 cars between them, but that is a hell of a gap. They're going to have to hope now that the 404 Ferrari in front of them, John Clements, has an absolute nightmare with these guys going past now, isn't he?
Well, they actually even ended up losing out that position to the 959. They'd sort of read the traffic ahead, and yeah, we saw the dust kick up going wide at the final turn, sort of ruined their run down the front straight, and just everyone powered past. And that is always the problem and the risk you run, you know, with the traffic. What I said, you know, when people literally tuck under the wing of a car that they might have just been blue flagged with, wait for the move to happen, and then you get the position basically for free because they have to move back over. So now the 71 has to pass the 959 again, which is not for their class. That is pro class car, and then it's on the attack for the for the Ferrari in front again. So it just makes it that little bit harder. And 48 minutes left to go. Time's ticking away for them.
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly a race against the clock now, as it often is in the sort of shorter races. But in these longer events, you know, when you're thinking big picture, when the clock suddenly does get to that final hour, the whole mindset changes. You know, people just start driving differently. Like we said before, it becomes a sprint race at that point. People buckle down and they crack on with the job at hand. And we're going to take a look back in a moment at some highlights very, very soon. We'll have a look at what's unfolded from the very start of the race. Ryan and I will just throw some words at it and just hope that some of it sticks. And then we'll get, of course, into what will be the final 3/4 of an hour of this race. And I'm excited to see if we get any major developments here, because let's not forget, Ryan, if there are any incidents in this last hour, they can be pretty much race ending. I know that these cars are very quick to be repaired in comparison to the real world where they would just retire, but you know, if you do have a big incident any time now, then you know, you've not got long enough to make up for it, have you?
Yeah, well, anything up to the final pit stop, as we say that, commentators curse tire struck for the 900 for the SMP Racing Esports car. This was the leader in silver. They're hard into the wall, and they might even tow back to pits.
Oh man, that is an absolutely devastating. It's like I literally summoned it, and the car is glued to the wall by the look of it. And yet there you go, pops back to the pits, and that was class leader as mentioned. So big drama there in the silver class. That car was looking absolutely faultless all the way through. They were running in what, 5th position overall, and now they drop way down, and they're going to continue to do so in the pits. I cannot believe it. And we were saying before, weren't we, Ryan, no news is good news, and as soon as that car flashes up on our screen, well, it's because it's had a major problem. That is a humongous shame. The driver at the wheel, not to point fingers, was Igor Murdasov, and the car now still sits in the pit lane, and we'll have to try and see where they come back out. They've lost a lap currently because the car has actually jumped straight to the pit lane, so obviously it doesn't count as completing the lap that it's on. So they're going to lose even more time because of that, but there was no way that they could get that thing back to the pits, was there really, Ryan? It looked completely undrivable. They couldn't get it away from the wall.
Yeah, and also then I believe the controls on the said will be locked also until the car's repaired. Well, with a hard hit, you know, like that, where the car was completely basically immobilized, it's gonna be, I guess, hazard a guess, maybe even a 2-minute, you know, before they're allowed to do anything again, which is going to be another lap, if not more. So for the 900, it is literally all come undone in the last sort of sprint to the line. I was just about to say, before we commentators cursed the 900, how anything up until the last pit stop you can still kind of deal with if you pick up a little bit of damage, or if you pick up, you know, some major damage, you can still kind of work it into your strategy. You know, you might have to take an earlier stop, take some more fuel, and work with what you've got, but you can still run with it. Anything, once you've dropped off the jacks for the final time and you come back out onto the racing circuit, anything that happens then is just time lost for you. And well, for the 900, as they still sit there in pits, 15th, dropping higher more and more.
That's absolutely devastating indeed. And well, just shows you how harsh racing can be, doesn't it? It's not a forgiving industry, and this is certainly not a forgiving championship either. It's so hard for these drivers to put all of the effort in and then have an issue like that. But you have to take these moments on the chin, and I mean, bouncing back from them is the main thing that we all remember. I mentioned it earlier, didn't I, that, you know, in these situations, it's not what happened, it's sort of how you come back from it and the fight back that you make. And we hope, of course, that that team can make a very strong recovery and still reignite their championship charge in later rounds. We look back now, though, at Dennis Schoeneiger, in the number 14 Mercedes, the Mercedes-AMG Esports Team Unicorns of Love car, right on the back of fellow Mercedes Otoki right now in the number 4 car. Seems like we've had him in the car from the very beginning. Speaking of the beginning, though, we're going to have a look back now at the highlights of this race so far. Obviously, getting underway under lights here at Bathurst, and a fantastic start it was indeed for the number 63 Lamborghini. Very, very close indeed, though, to the Mercedes. The number 55 car certainly keeping them on their toes in the opening stages, but what a fantastic sight it was as they got the race underway. This is the number 41 car making advances on that number 4 Mercedes. Again, just showing how close you can get together down the hill. Maybe a little bit too close in certain circumstances. Just like that. The tiniest of touches, and suddenly you can see how a housing estate rotates. The Mercedes got away with that very, very cleanly, though, to be honest with you. Just a little bit of room needed to be left there by the Bentley. Then a massive, massive moment and a humongous wobble for the Ferrari, as we discussed earlier on, going down the hill. Just that tiny little bit too much curb and a bit too much grass can end your race. And well, it wasn't the only car to go in the wall. The Yassi McLaren going down the hill, somehow being missed by that BMW. More contact as well. Obviously the 2 Aston Martins battling on. I just joined the stream at that point earlier on. The 72 car suffering from that one. Just a little bit of misjudgment. And then, as we were discussing again earlier on, the Unicorns of Love Mercedes having a massive old whack down the hill before getting collected again by another car, the number 94 Honda NSX. That car would then go on to make one hell of a recovery. One of the Lamborghinis spent its time spinning around at the cutting. Maybe not the best rejoin in the world, but still, to park a bright green Lamborghini in the road is far from subtle. More dramas at Skyline though, more Ferraris spinning and having big old contact with the wall. That was the number 21 machine that went in, the 7.9 flash axle car, having big drama, and then, while getting going again, collected by yet more machinery. That's one of the main problems here at Bathurst though. As soon as you are in the middle of the road, you have to make that decision on whether you are going to move or whether you're not, and it's hard for drivers and teams around you to know what you're going to do next. There's not much room to manoeuvre. Here was one of the incidents that we caught earlier on. The 23 Aston Martin ended up in the gravel off at the final corner after contact with the Bentley. Just that little move over to the left-hand side and a little move over to the right from the Bentley was all it took to unsettle the 23 Aston enough and put it off into the gravel. More moves being made up through the order. This was the Rocket SimSport Honda down the inside of the Porsche. We did catch this incident earlier on, and we did wonder why the Porsche was flashing its lights, but there we see the root cause. Car 10 on car 94. This was the Triton machine somehow turning this into an overtaking manoeuvre after what looked like a very sketchy and very scary entrance to the chase. Again, highlighting the talent level in this championship and the skill of these incredible drivers. The number 10 Bentley would then disappear off up the road. Once more into Skyline, more dramas. This was the Williams Bentley. Looked like he had it all collected, but then catching the wall into the dipper. Actually got away with it quite well in the way that he could carry on. Speaking about getting away with it, how on earth these two cars did not go absolutely piling off the road, we do not know. At that point, making contact certainly looked like it was going to be scary. Massive impact again for the Ferrari, and well, to be fair, it's been a hell of a race for that team. They've not had a very enjoyable time of it, especially going down the hill, but it just shows you the level that these guys are pushing at, and the way they have to continuously push to stay on the pace is, well, right on the limit, isn't it? And there is that limit. The class leader, the number 900 Mercedes, ploughing into the barriers, causing a massive amount of repairs needed, and that brings us up to date with where we are in the race. And to be fair, Ryan, we hadn't seen the extent of the damage on that Mercedes fully until then. That looked like more than just a pig, didn't it?
That was steering completely broken. You saw the driver was attempting, full lock left to right, and the car was just going where it wanted. They had basically no option. You couldn't limp that back to the pits with no steering at all, and that's obviously when they had to tow it back to pits and lost a lap and lost all the time to repair that car, and that will be a long old time to repair that car. It's not just a wipe an oily rag over it and continue on. That is, that is some serious repairs needed. So for the 110, who've been, running this race very cleanly, sort of very, we've seen them in some altercations and some battles, but nothing really too big for them, have just been gifted the lead of the silver class.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You've got to be in it to win it, haven't you? And at the end of the day, they've been doing their own job, pounding around in that 110 McLaren. They've still got 3 cars chasing them down for that class lead, in direct competition as well, right behind them. The top 4 in the class altogether in 10th, 11th, 12th and 13th. 2 McLarens, an Aston Martin and a BMW, but the lead is 36 seconds from that McLaren to said number 23 Aston Martin. And Jordan Sherratt completes another lap here at Bathurst. This time round was a 2:02.307, so he's still doing incredible times. The last lap round by Gregor Schill was a 2:01.692. Now that is red hot pace by Gregor Schill in the BMW Team BS competition. BMW, funnily enough. That is, that's almost fastest lap of the race pace, isn't it, to be honest with you?
Well, 0.3 of a second, and it would be fastest lap of the race. I think that was the fastest for the 63 car. I think it's a 2:01.3 dead is what the current fastest goes. But yeah, 330 laps in, that kind of pace still. The number 1, obviously, they're trying to push as much as they can now at all, because obviously not necessarily the race lead unless something happens to them, but they're still looking at the up the road to that 62. Maybe something might happen. That's all they're thinking, is just maybe something might happen.
Yeah, looking through the history of it, actually, the fastest laps of the race have been traded between the 63, 62, the 65, sorry, the 55 car actually did a really, really quick time of a 2 minutes 1.367 as well. About, trying to look actually, not too long into the race actually, that was within like the first sort of 20 minutes or so. And then the 62 just beat it by a couple of thousandths, the 63 did the same, and yeah, the fastest lap of the race maintained by the number 63, a 2:01.3 exactly at this point in the race, and that was a long old time ago now, nearly 9 hours ago in the race. So the pace has still been there, but not enough to go completely banzai and go full purple lap. But part of me thinks that some of these drivers, well, if they really wanted to go for it, they probably could in this last hour, once they definitely knew the car was good to the end, and of course that the tyres would be good to the end as well, not to ruin them too quickly.
Yeah, well, the 9 hours ago as well, what will also really help those lap times is the fact that obviously we started under darkness. We started under, a nice cool track. It wasn't the sun, the Australian sun hadn't come down and just baked everything, and that really will have helped, especially the turbo cars. They really prefer the cold air to chew on as well. So, that will have helped them, and even more drama coming into the end of the race. We had another 5-second penalty there for causing a collision. So because they've served their final pit stop, that will just be added on to the end of their race timer, I believe, unless that team has another splash and dash. But I think everyone now still running on track is going to be good to the end. 35 minutes left on the clock.
Yeah, that's it. I think if there is going to be any sort of major change, I think some people might just have a little splash and dash, like you say, just to make sure that the car is definitely there to the very end. That's the thing with timed races as well. You don't always know exactly how many laps you're going to get. So the leader could cross the line with 5 seconds left on the clock, and that means another 2 minutes of racing, another couple more litres of fuel that you might have needed. So calculations can get thrown out of the window. I'm sure we've both seen it before, but we've had a lot of timed races, especially at this level as well, where teams would cut it very, very fine. They would calculate it down to the nearest 100 millilitres of fuel, and then they'd need to do an extra lap that they didn't plan for. So they'd end up in the pits with 1 to go, drop a bunch of positions, and we'd get a big dramatic finale. Here goes the 63 past the 51 Ferrari, which I must say, actually, Ryan, even since we've come back onto the air, that team has just been absolutely amazing. They've left all the other Ferraris behind, but they've been really flying up into the top 10 again, considering they were outside the top 25. That's a mega effort, that.
Well, not only the top 25, I believe at one point they were almost 31st from all the way back there to get all the way back up to 7th. For what has happened for the 72, the fellow Renwelton car, the Esports Orange Aston Martin, spun around at the last corner.
Yeah, Renwelton not having a fantastic day of it, are they, to be honest with you? It was, of course, the Renwelton Ferrari earlier that flung itself down the hill many a times. I did try and scramble to see the team name, so I apologise for that one, for not picking that up straight away. But yeah, it was it's not been the best day at the office for the Renwelton team. Looking through the overall race order, the 72 Aston Martin, which we just saw there, has lost a few places now and is down in 35th place. 71 Ferrari down in 41st place. So again, not an easy time of it, and it's easy to lose it here at Bathurst. That's the thing, it's so easy to lose it here, and you can sort of be forgiven for having an incident. You know, it's one of those circuits where no driver is immune. You know, nobody is a complete ace at this place. You've just got to try and try again and just keep pushing, and it's whoever can find the limit and balance so cleanly on that limit here that makes the difference. Just over half an hour though left in this race, Ryan. I'm not quite sure where all that time's gone. Through all of our reminiscing and our sort of speculating and our guessing, it's actually been quite a quick sort of 3 hours, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've never really had battles up and down the road. You know, we've had dramas, we've had people coming off the road, and even right up until the last 30 minutes, as he says, maybe a bit of a sad day for Renwelton. Just seems that both of their cars are, you know, struggling. But there's been a few teams that have been like that. But I'm sure that, you know, a lot of teams will sort of, they're still in high hopes, and the thing that you can say, you know, is that you still finished the race. You still took the checkered flag. It's the most important thing. Yeah. But yeah, if you came to Bathurst and you don't leave with at least a few scrapes on the right-hand side of your car, I don't think you've really been to Bathurst. No, definitely not. Definitely not. You need to have kissed the wall a few times. Here's what happened to the 72. Just runs slightly wide, clips the barrier, and it flings the car around. And then on the right-hand side there, it was David Michel that has had that moment. They've done 326 laps of this circuit so far in this race, and well, they're one of the first teams to go flying into that wall. Amir Hosseini is back on our screens again, the number 88 car, Mercedes-AMG Acodis car. The Iranian driver doing a wonderful job. Here is Dennis DeMarco in the 563 Lamborghini. Not a single dull moment in this car's race so far, but he has got Van Druten in the 977 Porsche right up his exhaust pipe. The Kramer Racing Esports car piling on the pressure down the Conrod. There it is, the beautiful red and black machine. A lot of red, black and white liveries in the field, to be fair, for us to choose from, Ryan, but I think the Porsche really suits that sort of colour scheme. You often see them in sort of cleaner, cooler colours, the Porsches, but I think red really suits the car. Yeah, it's always kind of been like the Porsche style, though, to have a clean car. I think that just the styling of the car suits it more. You know, it's not got the kind of spaceship angles of a Lamborghini, or the angry face of a Ferrari, or basically the art canvas, which is the side of a Bentley. So they kind of gravitate to more cleaner liveries, which I think always looks a little bit better. But yeah, for the 563, they came out and they'd gapped a little bit of this Porsche, but they've decided that turn up the wick now. As the fuel load burns down, the Porsche is probably one of the most dynamic cars for this with the fuel burn. The more and more that the fuel burns off, obviously the tank's in the front of the car, the more light the front end will get, potentially, the more pace you can get out of it at the cost of reduced stability.
Yeah, that's it. I think a lot of the cars, the way they develop over a stint is important as well. You know, some of them really start to feel almost better as the stint goes on. You know, the more you get used to the understeer slowly dialing itself back in, and with some of them you sort of get a little bit more understeer that sort of increases and increases lap after lap, and it's hard to sort of tune yourself into how that car is behaving later on in the stint. So I know people that would, they'll choose a car based on its long run potential rather than its one lap pace. So I think that's why we do see such great variation in this sort of championship as well. And I'm happy that it's not just a self-proclaimed sort of Porsche fest, as we used to see. Admittedly, in some of the original sim grid, I think it was the Sprint Championship or the Sprint Series that we did. I think one of the rounds at Monza, I think there was every but like 3 cars was a Porsche in the opening rounds. But since then, you know, the balance of performance has been spot on. More and more teams choosing other cars to use, and we still get some of the cars coming out of the woodwork that we don't often see as much in the real world anymore, which is nice.
Yeah, and as we see some of the great onboard shots, the 997 having a bit of a tap coming out of Forest Elbow, sort of the child-bearing hips at the back of the Porsche, sort of clattering the wall, and the little bite that it had on Van Druten, just managing to save that car. But yeah, as he says, I remember when there always used to be throughout some series one car that everyone kind of gravitated towards. I remember for a while, a lot of the top-end esports categories was all dominated by the Ferrari at one point. You know, it was really a car to have. We had the fest of the Bentleys, you know, and that was great when it was great in the wet, great on fuel, had a massive tank, and was great on tyres. It just used to be the car for endurance. But obviously the balance of performance ever being worked on, ever being tuned and refined, and now we see where, you know, you look at the timing board. Okay, there's a couple of shared cars, but that's only because it's whatever team feels the most comfortable in. You can basically now rock up in any car and be good in it. I mean, we've got some Hondas in here, for example. When was the last time you ever really saw someone take a Honda, you know, for a full series, if it's not just a one make at Bathurst? But that's after it's been updated to the Evo 2 specifications. I've heard from a lot of teams that the car's actually quite nice now.
Yeah, I've not heard so much that it's nice. I've heard that
it's nicer than what it used to be. That's basically what they've told me, is that, you know, it's before it was only if you were going to do one race at Bathurst, maybe, or if it was a spec series. But you know, there's a couple of people who've used it and said that they can actually get some pace out of it. I know one driver who's even in this field who still swears by the Honda, still can make it, you know, go incredibly fast. And he turned around and said, yeah, I actually quite enjoy it now. But I think Joe is also likes to punish himself sometimes, so that's why he drives the Honda. It's also, I think, why he drives for FFS.
Well, I remember commentating on Joe once when he drove the Lexus.
That's a good combination.
And it rained, and he was gone.
Yeah.
And he was absolutely gone. You know, it was the one time where he was like, yep, watch this. I know exactly why I've picked this car, and here we go. But, you know, I've heard that the Honda is, like you say, nicer than it was, but it's still a car that is rapid, but only if you can squeeze the time out of it. You know, it can be a bit of a difficult car to drive sometimes, and that's often the way in GT3 machines. You know, some of them can be incredibly hard to drive on the absolute limit, but when you can drive them on that limit, that is when you get insane pace that it can take a lot to match. So I'm very grateful to see that we do have this big spread. And I mean, you mentioned the Hondas, coming back to it once again. I was actually quite surprised when I was commentating in Italy a couple of times last year, when I actually saw a team of 2 of them turn up for the Italian GT Championship. I walked into the paddock and I thought, flipping heck, I've never actually seen one of these out in the wild before. And it is a gorgeous looking car. I'm not so sure on the sound. It's a bit of a dull sound, but it certainly looks the part. And it's good to see that it's going well once again. So, yeah, we'll leave that to bed, though, because that's another tangent that we've gone off on. I think we've lost count of those now. But Greg Schill, anyway, car 1, currently in P3. Mike says it's 6 tangents that we've gone off. I disagree. I think it's at least double that. But either way, we come into the chase once more. Gregor Schill flashing the lights, trying to get the traffic out of the way as well. Bit of a scary moment there with the Mercedes not wanting to give that up too easily. But this is the thing now. I mean, not just our leaders and the guys on the lead lap here, Ryan, but the drivers that may be 1, 2 or even 3 laps down, they've got their own fights to think about here, so they might not roll over as much when it comes to letting the leaders by.
Yeah, well, there was room for at least one more coat of paint on that Mercedes, so there was plenty of room there. You could at least put on one more coat of emulsion, and there would be some space. But yeah, Gregor Schill really wanting to muscle that car through and not lose any kind of time. But this is sort of the moment we've been running now for over 11 and a half hours, and you've really sort of got to keep everything tight and in check because the checkered flag is only just around the corner. But we've seen how easily it can all come undone. I'm looking at the 900. That their race. A lot of people might have said that it was in the bag, and look what happened to them. It's never over right up until you see that black and white checkered flag.
And Igor Murdasov now in that 900 car is, well, way down the order in 33rd position. It's unbelievable. And we've got our fantastic moderator in the YouTube chat as well, Omaris, has actually said, unless something disastrous happens, the 63 has got this in the bag. So now that has been double cursed, as one of the commentators has now mentioned it. We'll have to wait and see. Not that we're trying to, I want to just clarify that, but at the end of the day, the powers that be will control what happens to the end of this race, and the powers that be is currently Jordan Sherratt at the moment. It's fantastic to watch all these guys now really pushing in that last moment. And I tell you what, actually, Ryan, as menacing as all of these cars look, those sort of snake-like eyes on the front of that BMW, I really didn't like them when the car first got announced and first came out. But you know what? When that car now, knowing the purpose that thing carries with it into this last stint, that looks like a very menacing and purposeful car, does it not?
Oh yeah, as well when it comes screaming up behind you in your, in your mirror. Especially if I was any one of these cars in front, for the lap traffic. You look in the mirror, you see the big angry BMW sort of charging towards you, and you just get over the radio. It's Gregor Schill, and it's like, gotta move out of the way. And speaking of battles and moving out of the way, the 977 trying to muscle their way around one of the Bentleys, not for a position, but they're trying to. I think they're still trying to fight their way back up to the back of that Lamborghini that we saw earlier. They just sort of dropped off the back end of it. Possibly the Porsche that I said, has started to change dynamically. It might just be in these final 20 minutes. It's just changed to the point where the driver's now having to fight it more than it's working for them.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems. You get that balance where you can fight a car and slide it around a little bit, but you can do it while carrying the momentum. You can still keep the pace up while you're doing it, but you say it there yourself, Ryan, that sometimes you fight it a little bit too much. And did that Lamborghini hit the wall there? It's not even a Lamborghini. I thought it was a Lamborghini. I saw green, I'm sorry. It's the Honda. Looked like he hit the wall there. It seemed like it sort of clipped it with the left-hand side and went slightly sideways as he went over the hill into Reed Park, but somehow getting away with that there. That's the 99 car. Well, that would have been a big old moment for the books, wouldn't it, if Gregor Schill would have got caught up in somebody else's incident. But that's the risky run, really, with staying so close to the traffic. But I guess on the other hand, he's got no choice.
Yeah, exactly. He's still wanting to push along with the 99. And apparently what we're being told from our producer, look, what we might feel is that the 62 for Robbie Stapleford might, with 20 minutes left on the clock, they might have to do a splash and dash to the end.
They've done 28 laps on this stint, and usually they do 31, and it's 2 minutes a lap. So definitely, they will definitely have to come back in before this race is done. Let's have a look at the cars around them, though. To be fair, actually, race leader will have to as well, because they've done 29 laps on this stint, so they've only got 2 more to go. Gregor Schill will not have to do that, because they've got at least 19 left to go on their stint. 19 laps, that is. So Gregor Schill is the one that's going to gain a bunch of time here. He may be 1 minute and 12 seconds down, but it's still time that they're going to gain. Robbie has got the disco lights going on there, the RGB LEDs cycling through as much as they can. Now, as much as that's entertaining and it's good fun to watch, because Robbie is a real character, that's surely got to be somewhat distracting at points. Because, I mean, I've got a lot of RGB LEDs in my office, but depending on what I'm doing, I do set the colours of them accordingly, and I don't have them strobing through different colours like that. I imagine that is a little bit distracting.
You need to get into the hype zone. You see, he's got the RGB cycling now for the true hype towards the end of the race. You know that it's go time when the RGB LEDs cycle.
Yes, it is indeed. I mean, I've seen people have them ridiculously quickly before properly strobing through, and with one of those projector lights that puts some sort of like Cosmos style pattern on the roof as well. Some drivers really do go for it and make a lot of entertaining scenes out of their webcams on the Zoom call that we have, where all of the cameras and the drivers show off their sort of driving position and their rigs as such. But this is Robbie Stapleford in the BMW G2 Esports machine, and he is really, really on a move right now. That BMW looking very good. Two of them on for a podium. The next BMW down, though, in 12th position with Apostol at the wheel, number 33 car. Third in its class, though, on for a class podium at the moment, Ryan. Speaking about class podiums, Victor Nikolai popped into the YouTube chat earlier and said it's the first SRO endurance race for the team, and they will finish P2 in class if nothing bad happens. That's a hell of an effort, that one, isn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly. You really can't be complaining if it's the first time that you've come out and then you just get a podium right off the bat. It's sort of leading to greatness and you know, leading to more eyes being on you. You've got to hope that that sort of momentum carries you forward in the series. But sometimes it does. You know, if you start out on such a high, you know, you can go back to the team and be like, wow, you know, that was a fantastic drive, well done, everyone's really happy, everyone's really hyped, and then you just sort of continue that great energy into the second round. So we'll have to sort of keep his eye on what that team can do.
Yeah, and that's it now. We're going to be keeping our eyes all over the place, as I'm sure our producer Mike is as well. He's got umpteen different PCs and everything going on behind the scenes, and he's done an amazing job once more, so we have to sort of thank him in advance for that, and everybody that's been helping out as well. Whoa, hello, that was a Mercedes giving the wall, well, it was, I was going to say a kiss, but it was more of a Glaswegian kiss, wasn't it? It was a proper headbutt of the wall out of the cutting, and now he's staying very, very far away from the walls there. Marek Schintz, though, in the number 191 Mercedes in the Pro class, doing quite the job. It's safe to say he's not too far behind the Ferrari in front of them right now, but the 67 car seems to have had a good run over the top of the mountain at this stage. But then again, he doesn't need to worry about it too much because it is not a position in their class. And again, just so close to the wall. But this MKE-RS Mercedes actually looking a bit more scuffed up at the back end, and of course at the front end when we get a look at it outside of the shade. It's certainly not in the best of conditions, is it, this one? It's going to have some work done before the next round of the championship. Yeah,
well, look at how lacking in straight line speed they are. That was, you know, one of the fellow Mercedes is, I think that was one of the Legion of Racers cars with the Motul livery, but they you know how quickly they caught up and flew by. Those cars are basically identical unless you count the you know, the setup changes. They just passed them like it was nothing. So the aerodynamics on that car are really ailing, and just the drag now, they're just trying to limp it to the end, really. I think they've realized that the car, you know, the next pro car, the 127 driven by William Hendrickson, if they pitted to fix the damage, obviously they'd lose that position. But if they can just keep going around, they might just squeak the you know, squeak that position through. They just came through turn one. I think we saw them all the way in the background. So yeah, for the 191, trying to limp it along towards the end of the race, they'll be looking at that clock for the final 15 minutes and hoping that it just passes faster so they don't lose any more places.
Yeah, that's it. They're going to be watching their mirrors, and they're going to be watching that clock, like you say, mate. They're going to be hoping as well that the leader overtakes them right near the end, but based on where they are on track at the moment, I don't think that's going to happen. Bad news from the Rocket Simsport camp as well, and I'm going to try and remain unbiased here, but Jack McIntyre, a good friend of mine, saying that they've had a pit stop bug after 11 hours. He had less than 2 minutes left on his driver time. Obviously, the drivers are limited in how much of the racing they can do. He's then done an extra lap to try and get someone else in the car, and then he's got disqualified as he went over the pit entry line after 11 hours of the race.
Oof. And I was going to say, that is just completely heartbreaking. Yeah. Especially that close to the pits. You basically made it. The golden arch was there of the, you know, the warm caring of the pit lane, and no, it was not to be. Well,
I'm going to have to go out and get Mackey's after this. Sorry. Marek Schind's in 18th place, though, is still watching that gap. And this is the thing, he's got to let a lot of traffic by as well. So it's not like they can just run around on their own and just do lap after lap after lap. They have to consider all of the different cars that are going to go past them while this final phase of the race is being completed. So they're going to lose a bit more time than they would do if they just had a clean circuit. So it's pretty impossible to calculate where they're going to be come the very end of this race, but we will keep our eyes on that gap with Hendrickson in 20th position. So it's not a very it's not a very subtle blue BMW, is it? The 127 car, so we'll certainly see it coming. This is not a subtle BMW either, though. Robbie Stapleford absolutely flying at the moment. He is in second position with a 2:03.9 last time round, but he has done 31 laps, completed their pit stop, and is now back out on track. The 63 car has also pitted, and the gap is definitely going to be for track position now, because Gregor Schill, wait for it, is there in the background. There he is. He's about 3.5 seconds back on this BMW, and Gregor will now close in and try to get the better of Robbie, but of course he'll only have taken a tiny bit of fuel on board here, Ryan, so they're going to be on similar fuel levels. Gregor might not be that much quicker. We're going to have to keep our eyes on the lap times here. Here he is with the traffic in front of him.
Yeah, well, at the minute, Gregor's got that big problem of two cars that he's got to get by, lap traffic. You can see Stapleford up ahead. That is the 62. That is, that's the target. 12 minutes remaining. Still got a number of laps to do it. He will even be able to see through the windscreen coming through, coming through the chase and the cutting of the target ahead. But yeah, for Gregor, he needs to get through this traffic basically yesterday and continue racing up. It's going to be very close to the line, I think, because the one has really shown some pace when they when they needed it.
Yeah, definitely. I think if they know that they're that close to the car in front, I'm expecting to see them really crack on with this right now. And if there's anybody that can do the job, I mean, Gregor Schill, we all know how amazing Gregor is behind the wheel. He's absolutely rapid, really exciting to watch. Not to say that Robbie Stapleford is not, though. Robbie's a real star, a very important young talent for sim racing. There's a number of these drivers that they're not even old enough to drive a car in the real world. They're still driving these virtual cars that are so close to the real thing with incredible precision, incredible consistency. And it's just a joy to watch, because it makes you wonder, give it a few years, will we see them in real racing cars, and where will they get to with their careers? And it's just exciting to have that prospect. There has been, we've had some screenshots from Dejan Jankovic behind the scenes here, and it is the 404 Ferrari completely sideways in a wall through McPhillamy Park, with somehow the BMW behind it. I think it's the... Which one is that, actually? Is it the 9... I'm trying to see the number on it, actually. I can't quite tell. But it's one of the BMWs has only just missed it. I think it's the 959 car. It is. Yeah, it's the Wacko's Flip Table racing car. Just missing them as they go through McPhillamy Park. That's quite scary to have a Ferrari suddenly across the front of you there. And in quite comical fashion, there's a blue flag being waved about it, above it, as he's gone through. Right then, we need to have a look at the pit stop data, and well, they have been in total time in the pits during this race 4.7 seconds quicker than anybody else in this one, and that can make all the difference. At the end of the day, the gap is between them and the number one car smaller than that right now, so they have definitely made that difference in the pit lane. And people often say, Ryan, that the pit lane doesn't matter that much in sim racing because it's not that much that changes, but it certainly looks like it does.
Yeah, well, that the time difference, these kind of drivers, especially between these two, the 1 and the 62, they might battle for 4 or 5 laps, to get 3/10 on one another. So when you add up all that time of 4.7 seconds, that is a huge gap. You know, that's monumental, and as he says, that's what's kept the 62 ahead, because the gap right now is slower. Had the 62 been, you know, on a same delta as the one, they'd be nose to tail or possibly behind right now. So that is kind of what you know, has brought their race into it with 9 minutes to go. And that's also, you know, when I mentioned about the big picture racing and the strategy, those are the kind of strategies that these teams make, those tiny little changes, which ultimately, right towards the end of the race, has put them where they are. And they're looking, at least right now, if they can hang on to it for a P2. But Gregor Schill is still, you know, not done yet, as that is one of the Williams Esports, I believe. Mercedes is just flew off the road in front of Gregor.
That was Darren McCormack going off the road in the number 55 car. So even still, problems in the latter stages for many a team, many a driver. And this is the thing now, the fatigue wears in. Some of the drivers become a little bit more relaxed because they think, oh, well, there's not that much longer of the race left to go. But this can be the real peak moment for mistakes, for accidents, for drama. You know, no matter what, 12 hours of racing or not, no motorsport waits for anybody. You know, it doesn't matter if you're the race leader or anyone. Even if you're in last place in these races, drama is certainly on the horizon for at least somebody in the field. But we continue to look then at this battle between Robbie Stapleford and Gregor Schill, and well, Gregor really flying in that last sector there by the look of it. Let's have a look at the lap times as they cross the line. Stapleford did a 2:02.5 and Schill actually did a 2:03.0, so Robbie does open up the gap slightly, but you could maybe attribute that to the traffic on that lap there, Ryan. Let's see what he can do now if this Ferrari gets out of the way nice and simply for him.
Yeah, that was the big problem that Schill was going to face, was the traffic. It's gaining and gaining on the 404, pulls out to the outside, and as they disappear off the camera, you're pretty certain that the one will swoop back to take the racing line as they do. So now there is no gap, as you can see out the windscreen of Schill. There is Robbie Stapleford just going through, and now the real race is on, really, because I don't think there's going to be much traffic up ahead. Even looking in front of the 62, doesn't look like they're going to get any real sort of lap traffic for at least a little bit. So the 62 and the 1, the race is on.
It really is, and now it's going to be a direct fight. It's incredible to think that after 11 hours and 53 minutes that they are still only separated by a matter of seconds. That's one of the things we really love about modern day endurance racing, modern day esports racing as well. Combine all of those elements and put together a 12 hours of Bathurst race, and you can always guarantee that it's going to be an exciting encounter. Race leader at the moment, though, still Jordan Sherratt in the 63 car. Robbie Stapleford and Gregor Schill fighting over third place. A car that we've not really seen much on our screens, if at all, during this stint has actually been the 4th place car, the number 66 McLaren of Eamon Murphy. That car, of course, being the McLaren Veloce GT team. He's sharing that car with James Baldwin, George Boothby and Isaac Gillison. And they have had a hell of a race so far, but again, very under the radar. Darren McCormack still in 5th place, car 55 P5. Then it's Mikhail Stetsenko in the 149 machine. Dennis Schoeniger in the number 14. Leon Otoki in the number 4 is in 8th place. Then we have Kamil Pawlowski in 9th, that fantastic comeback from the 51 Ferrari, and Jakob Osterman is in the 110 McLaren, currently in P10. But right now, 6 minutes to go here at the mountain, Ryan. Only a handful of laps left to go, maybe 3 if that, and this is still going to come down to the wire. The gap now 2.9 seconds.
Yeah, 3 laps potentially, depending on where the leader is. It's really going to come down to the end. Still race control throwing up things right towards the end of the race. Car 1 and car 55, it was a warning for ignoring blue flags, and that's the other thing you've got to, you know, take into account is we've seen some teams really not want to pull over if they're battling that hard, but eventually you do have to you know, acknowledge the blue flags and let potentially the leader through or the battling cars. So even drivers right towards the end just getting reminded that, you know, you still have to use your mirrors. But yeah, it's going to be a battle right down to the wire. This is the 63 Jordan Sherratt, the leader of the race, has basically driven it from lights to almost the flag, 5 minutes to go. I think we're going to get a good indication of how many more laps they're going to be when they come up and cross the line.
Yeah, we'll have to try and do the quick maths on the line here as they close up on one of the Honda NSXs. Now, is that the 93 or the 94 car? It's not even a Honda NSX, for crying out loud, Chaz. I just saw a red and black car go off the corner of my screen, and I thought, surely I'm going to take a punt that it's one of the HPD Jazz cars, but no, it's definitely not. It is the Mercedes that's just moved into 8th position. That is Leon Artoki in the number 4 car, the Mercedes-AMG Esports Team HRT machine. And look, there's an Audi. There's a wild, lesser-spotted Audi just in front of them there. I'm pretty sure that's the 144 car, is it not? I'm probably wrong on that as well. I'm not even going to try. But still, Jordan Sherritt crossed the line with well over 4 minutes and 4 seconds to go, which would have been 2 laps, pretty much, give or take. So we're going to get this lap and then 2 more here. So we're due about 2 laps as of right now. And that will be that for Jordan Sherritt. So they're going to be hoping that the cars are all fueled up enough, because let's not forget, while they have taken their final stops, they might try and put as little fuel in as possible just to make it to the end, because you have to take every chance you can to save those extra seconds, don't you, Ryan?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, that was like that, what we mentioned earlier, that 4.7 seconds. Well, that also could just be, you know, 1 second less of fuel. You know, that might be just 1 or 2 litres, but it might be that 1 or 2 litres that you need right towards the end. So we'll see what happens between the 62 and the 1. But yeah, as you mentioned, the lesser spotted Audi, have you also noticed, if you get your nerd hat on and you zoom in really closely, that is the new Audi, because it's got a curvy wing.
Yes, it's got the reverse swan neck wing supports, as they're called, and it is a wonderful looking thing. I've noticed actually that Audi are doing that on their TCR cars as well. I was fortunate enough to see the brand new RS3 LMS TCR at Imola a few weeks ago, racing in TCR Italy, and that car has the same style wing where the supports come over the back of it and then go forward. So surely it's got something to do with just having that extra little plane that the air can hit against the rear wing, coming up from behind it, just sort of extending the downforce of it over the back. It may be the tiniest of advantages, but clearly Audi have found something that works with it. On to what's going to be the penultimate lap of the race then, with Jordan Sherritt. 2.5 minutes left to go here. That is the 144 Audi in front, so I've actually got something right. It's a miracle. The 144 machine is being driven by Hugo Collap, Niek Nepels, Mathis Leitaio, and Michael Mazur. That's the full motorsport by Race Esport team car. Very bright and wonderful livery as well. Certainly stands out, but it's a shame not to see more Audis fighting up there for these top positions. But I guess maybe, Ryan, if it's a slightly different Audi to how it was before, it could take some time for teams to get used to and to get confident with for this sort of level of competition. As, oh no, the 51 Ferrari's been around.
Oh no, what's happened to Pawlowski in the 51 Scuderia Ferrari Velis Esports? This car was on such a charge, and they've been backwards at turn 2. Hopefully they didn't make it all the way to the wall. Have to see what really happened to them. But yeah, the new Audi, I think it's still a lot of people are trying to get used to it. It's a very different beast from what I'm told, because of the aerodynamics. And for the silver class, positions still have not been sort of sorted out, as it's a bit of a Bentley on McLaren action. This is what happened to the 51, and that was the 100, I think. That was the silver class leader, McLaren, was it not?
Yeah, the 110 machine, actually, having a little bit of an altercation with them. That was Jakob Osterman, and that was going to be for position, actually, at the time. So, yeah, that's certainly thrown the cat amongst the pigeons there. They didn't need to fight for that position, but I guess if they felt that they needed to try and hold up any sort of seconds they can, then, well, they felt the need to go for it. But 45 seconds left on the clock. Our race leader will be crossing the line any moment now. I think they already have crossed the line, actually, to start the final lap of the race. And Gregor Schill continues to try and chase down Robbie Stapleford, but the gap has gone back up. And there we go. Jordan Sherritt in the Automobili Lamborghini Esports Lamborghini crosses the line, rounds the first corner, and is now on their final tour of Bathurst here in the first round of the Mobileye GT World Challenge IGTC Esports Endurance Series of 2022.
So it's going to be, I believe, 448 completed, so it's going to be 449 laps, which is 349 laps, which is just a monumental task when you think how many times, you know, these lot have been pounding around, really. 300 plus times. They've, we've had accidents, we've had position changes all up and down the field. Even in this 3 hours that we've just been in the box, there's been a whole 9 hours prior to this that we didn't even see, that has just been action packed apparently. And for the 62 for Robbie Stapleford, it looks like they are going to hold on to it unless something happens to them. You can see on our right, that is the 63. It's the race leader pounding down the mountain now. Is the gap that is to P2, but realistically, even that gap isn't massive when you think that that is a full 12 hours around Bathurst, one of the hardest tracks to stay consistent at. You're less than half a lap away, really, and P2 to P3 gap is realistically nothing.
Well, that's it. I mean, after so long of a race, to just be within a few tenths, sort of, if you're the car behind, that can be a little bit disheartening, knowing that you came so close. But I guess you have to take the rough with the smooth in this sort of game, and just know that points make prizes, and this is a championship at the end of the day. This is not just a one-off event. And into the final corner once more, rounding the very last corner here at Bathurst to take the checkered flag. The number 63 Automobili Lamborghini Esports car takes the win at Bathurst in the 12-hour. Jordan Sherritt crossing the line, but he and his teammates Gianfranco Giglioli and Giorgio Simonini will be absolutely over the moon to have brought the Lamborghini to win here in this very tough event. Second place is going to go the way of BMW G2 Esports. It's G2 P2 with Robbie Stapleford crossing the line. He and his teammates Charlie Crossland and Isaac Price taking a very well-earned second place. And Gregor Schill sharing that car with Artur Camara and Nils Nyox. The BMW Team BS competition machine rounds out your podium. And in the silver class, it is Jakob Osterman in the number 110 McLaren for AJA Sim Racing Team powered by Gardi. He is sharing that car with, yes, I'm going to try and read the names out, Jura Petrichenko, Jan-Marcel Dietrich and Louis Roters. And a really strong effort by all of those guys to get that class win. Second place is going to go the way of the 33 BMW. And there it is, crossing the line right now. Sebastian Apostol brings that car home. And then we wait now for James Parker in the FFS Racing Aston Martin, the wonderful pink machine. That's certainly a car that's had its own dramas as well today, isn't it, Ryan? But still, a podium, a fantastic result for them.
Yeah, kept it going despite, even the issues that they faced, and you can't really be sad with a P3 in silver, even with, all of those issues that they faced here at Bathurst. You got to really, turn around and say, well, we had a race that was full of issues, but we still came P3, improve on it very slightly, and we could win silver class. Well, that's it. You've just got to be in it to win it, and as we saw earlier, unfortunately, an incident decided the winner there, but that's just part of racing. That is just part of racing, and to be honest with you, I don't think we would have it any other way. Here's a quick look back then at the start of the race. As you can see, under lights, it was a hell of a beautiful start as well. I really love Assetto Corsa Competizione, and in the darkness, just look at it, it's absolutely phenomenal. Easily the best looking sim when it comes to nighttime driving. Very immersive indeed. The whole field piling their way around turn one. You can see how excited the crowd were in the background. Look at them go, absolutely loving every minute. Hands in the pockets all throughout, innit? Obviously dramas in the back there early on, but that is to be expected at Bathurst. But look at this sim, how good looking is that? It's phenomenal, isn't it? It still blows my mind even to this day. Yeah, everyone were jostling for positions right at the start. I mean, look all the way back. We're 3 wide, potentially even 4 wide at some points before everyone decided to settle it out. You have to settle it out before the mountain. And there we go. All the slow motion shots just look phenomenal, especially with all the glare on the cameras. And, sometimes people say, this looks pretty much photorealistic as the sparks fly as well off the low-hanging splitters. Yeah, and it does. Some of the pictures that we get behind the scenes, we've got Dynamic Gary Paravani doing a wonderful job at taking loads of screenshots for us. He does all the work for the socials, as far as I know, and his work. If this is no disrespect to Gary, because I obviously
you know, I know that the amount of effort that goes into it. If it was not for the angle, the car, like the camera being in the air, you would honestly think it was real. Like it is so realistic. The fact that the cars, the way that the motion blur works, the lighting, the dirt even on the cars as well, you know, it's just insane. It really is insane. And Assetto Corsa Competizione, not just in the way that it looks, but continues to be one of the very finest sims in the world because of just how good the racing can be. You know, we've had an event like this and it absolutely takes it in its stride. We're going to have our first chat with the silver class winners, actually, who we're going to bring in from the number 110 McLaren. That is the AJA sim racing team powered by Gardi. And, well, very well done, gentlemen, to take the win in your class. We're joined by Jakob Osterman and Louis Roters. Jakob, just to come to you, mate, obviously the latter stages of that race seem to be a hell of a lot of hard work, to be honest, just to sort of keep the car in check. But when you did gain the eventual race lead, what was your overall feeling there? Did you feel nervous at that point?
Yeah, hello first of all, and congrats to everyone who finished the race. It was pretty hard for us, to be honest. And the last stint, Jura said the 900 hit it into the wall and it's over for them. And we just thought, no fucking way. We got a SK30 and we're still able to win. Like, how is this possible?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you know, sometimes you need a little bit of fortune to come your way in the latter stages of the race. But at the end of the day, I kept saying you have to be in it to win it. And you guys were right up there in the fight the whole time. And Louis, you must be absolutely over the moon with that result, considering how hard you guys had to push in the middle of the race.
Yeah, the feeling is absolutely unbelievable. I didn't thought that we could win this after the SK30, and then the message from Jura, just unbelievable.
And talk us through, I mean, Bathurst itself, Jakob. Such a challenging circuit, even just to do a hot lap on, but to do a really long race like this at the pace that you guys have got, it must be so hard to stay focused all the way throughout.
To be honest, I'm really surprised no one of us hit the car completely into the wall. So in practice there were 1 or 2 moments where we completely destroyed the car. So I thought that we get like one major fly-off because the car was really hard to handle at some point, but I'm happy that it didn't happen and that we were able to win the race.
Well, that's it. And everybody always says to finish first you have to finish. But of course, it was a mega result for you this afternoon or this evening, wherever you may be in the world. And you know, just coming back to you, Louis, the McLaren and cars that are mid-engined, not always the most favoured at Bathurst, but did you have confidence in the McLaren ahead of the race that it would be a good car around here?
It was the first time for me to drive the McLaren, especially for this race. So it was a really hard job in practice to handle the car, and it's really different. I drive normally the BMW M4, so mid-engine McLaren is really hard to handle, and you have to brake. You have other brake markers and other steering markers, so it was really tough for me to avoid any contacts with the wall for the first training laps. But I did very much laps, so I think I did around 600 or 500 laps. So I did it, and I think I did it good. So yeah, I don't know what to say.
Well, fair enough, mate. I mean, it was a great effort by you guys and the rest of your team as well. Just any final words from you, Jakob, just to give a thanks to anybody that may be watching?
Yeah, I need to say thanks to SRO for hosting such a competition. It's always great to get the best sim racers in a sim together to race against each other. It's just great, and hopefully we see more of this in Spa. And
any final thanks from you as well, Louis?
Just the same as Jakob.
Fair play, boys. Well, great to speak to you both. Any final questions or anything from you, Ryan?
No, I was just about to say, well done, really, for the silver class win. After having to sort of keep it calm, keep it consistent. Like I said, maybe you didn't think that you were going to get it, but right up until the checkered flag waves, anything could happen. That's exactly what happened to the 900. So I look forward to seeing your car at Spa.
Thank you.
Lovely stuff. Well, thank you very much for joining us, gents. You enjoy the rest of your evening, and yeah, we'll see you at Spa. Cheers.
Yo, see ya, ciao.
Cheers.
Brilliant, brilliant stuff. Great to hear from our silver class winners there, who were really, really pleased to come and have a chat. Apologies, though, for the language there, but as you can imagine, even in sim racing, the adrenaline still runs high, and these guys are both very, very happy indeed. Now, we are actually joined by Giorgio Simonini. Now, there is an ampersand next to his name, so I believe he's not alone in the booth here, but he's obviously joined by one of his teammates here. And, Giorgio, you must be over the moon with that, mate, because it just didn't seem to go wrong at any single point over the race. Talk us through it.
Yeah, indeed. It was such an amazing race from the start of the race till the end. I'm really happy about the whole team. And actually, Lorenzo Marzi is our manager, so I'm really happy to have him here today to party all together. And yeah, it was such a pleasure, to drive this well today without touching once the walls together with my teammates. It was really, really well done from everyone today. So as our engineers helping us, Dan Wells and Brandon. So it was really, really a good teamwork today, and thanks everyone.
And what was the car like over a long run? Because it didn't seem like the car slowed down. It didn't seem like it became too much of a handful. You usually expect cars to start moving around and show a bit of body language like they're really struggling, but you guys seem to handle it well. Did it feel like that in the cockpit?
Yeah, I mean, at the start of the stint, it was quite stable. After that, it started, to slip in entry corner and exit. But if you were able to nail it, you could maintain the same pace, if not 2 or 3 tenths higher. But overall, I mean, I'm pretty happy about the setup we managed to create. So I think that the teamwork in this case was key to try to adapt all the driving styles. And yeah, indeed, it was a perfect race from start to the end and from the practice sessions as well. So I'm really pleased.
Well, we love to see it, Giorgio. It was a fantastic performance. And of course, moving forward in the rest of the championship, are you confident with the car and the team to carry on this sort of form?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the car looks very, has a potential. Of course, we will not have the best car in all the tracks, so we will try to adapt as usual and give our best. I think we have a good team to work on getting well through the championship, but indeed you always need to work hard. Nothing is ever easy, so surely we'll need to push every time.
Well, we look forward to seeing how you get on, mate. Is there anyone you'd like to give a quick thanks to before we let you go?
Yeah, surely I want to thank for sure the opportunity that Lambo gave me to perform through their names, so as to all my teammates that have done a really well done job, so as our engineers, and in first place Lorenzo Marzi, that I want to let him say some words to the public. And yeah, thanks everyone.
No, it's so cool, guys. We started with sim racing with the Lamborghini 3 years ago, with running our single brand championship, which Jordan won actually last year, so he get the chance actually to drive for the esports team. And then with Giorgio and Gianfranco, we are building a team, a legacy for the future. So it's super cool, and thank you, guys.
Fantastic to hear from you, mate. Thank you very much for jumping in. That was your race winners, everybody. A fantastic, fantastic performance by the number 63 Automobili Lamborghini Esports team this afternoon and this evening. And it seems like that's all we have time for with the interviews and everything else. Ryan, any final words from you, mate? I think it's been a good laugh, hasn't it, really?
It's been great to come back, and I was so happy when I got the call that you want to come commentate on the SRO Bathurst 12-hour, and I don't think I could have bitten Mike Johnson's hand off quicker, because it was just it was just a phenomenal race right from the start. I've had it on in the background basically all day. We've had some great battles, some, as I said when I first came in, some great liveries. Seeing friends up and down the grid, and what a finish! 12 hours still a few seconds between it, and a surprise silver winner.
Yeah, definitely, and you know, everything still shaped out in the last hour of the race, and it's the exact excitement that we wanted. But that is unfortunately all we have time for here today, everybody. It's been an absolute joy once again. Thanks as ever to all the guys behind the scenes for their fantastic work on the broadcast, on bringing us all the information. Mike Hamlet as well for all of his incredible info and average lap times and pit stop stints, everything. And all of you guys for watching as well at home. We hope you've enjoyed all of the show. Thanks of course to Ryan. It's been fantastic to work with you in this respect, mate. It's been really, really good fun. And I've been Chaz Draycott. It's been a hell of a lot of fun. Like I say, I'm going to keep repeating myself to the end, but with a final few words to give you all before we leave you for this evening, it's best to hand over to one of our very, very good friends here at SRO Esports. Here is the wonderful Paul Jeffrey.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much, guys. And thank you for being with us in this broadcast. An incredible race has unfolded, and we're going to do it all again on the 18th of June for our 24 hours of Spa-Francorchamps. So make sure you stay tuned to our social media channels and come and join us again for what should be another incredible Festival of Motorsport. From myself, Paul Jeffrey, and from the entire team here at SRO Esports, thank you for tuning in. And until next time, see you later. Bye-bye.